Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if Naruto has all Saiyans potential in Dragon Ball. Before I start, please support for more amazing content and do consider subscribing to my channel and share this video with your friends. This is written by MercenaryGrax and link in the description and support writer. Let's start the video. Chapter 1 Arrival. Caulifla snarled as she pressed buttons and tugged on the steering wheel. Why the hell isn't anything working? What the hell is up with this shit? She exclaimed out of pure frustration. What was the problem, you might ask? She and her best friend's sister figure, Kale, were taking a leisurely cruise in their spaceship, visiting world after world in search of fun. Well, Caulifla wanted to have some fun, Kale was just happy to spend time with her sister figure. However, they weren't expecting to encounter trouble in the form of their spaceship malfunctioning along the ride. Well, it wasn't just malfunctioning, their engine blew out and they weren't entirely sure why. Until they could land somewhere safely, they wouldn't be able to check on it to see what might have caused such a thing to happen. As it was, the black-eyed Saiyan couldn't do a thing to stop the inevitable descent towards the nearby planet. Nothing she tried worked and it was looking absolutely hopeless for the two of them. Looking at the information on her screen, she saw that the planet they were over was named Earth and it was inhabited by a race of beings that possessed something they called chakra. Whatever the hell that is. Caulifla muttered to herself before looking out the window at the planet below. Kale, you might want to hold on to something. This is going to be a bumpy landing. Once they entered the atmosphere of the planet, their ship began descending even faster than it already was. Clinging tight to her chair, Caulifla braced herself for impact. Kale was screaming from where she was sitting, so, after gritting her teeth for a bit, the energetic Saiyan shouted out, Kale. Calm yourself. We're going to be just fine. I promise. That's what you said the last time. Kale shouted, her nerves still high-strung, especially with their ship plummeting towards the unknown planet below them. Sure, they had information about it, but information was different than a first-hand account. With both females bracing for impact, their ship entered the Earth's atmosphere and began rocking to the point both females had to grip the armrests of their chairs tightly, lest they get thrown around the room. It felt like their spaceship was about to break apart, it was shaking that badly. As they plummeted towards the planet's surface, a warning began to sound throughout the ship, alerting the two women to the fact that their ship was falling apart. First the rear thruster fell off, then the armor plating began to go, and soon enough, all that was left was the cockpit. Kale, shooting her best friend and sister an all but bloody nasty look, said, if we die because of this, I blame you, Caulifla. Noted Kale. Brace for impact. The more assertive of the two females shouted as they neared the ground. It didn't take long for the cockpit to hit the ground and go tumbling along, both women feeling rather ill from being thrown around so much. When they finally stopped after the cockpit hit a rather large tree, both women looked down from their positions, seeing as they were now hanging upside down in the cockpit. Caulifla and Kale both dropped out of their seats to the ceiling before stumbling out of their ruined spaceship, the two of them rushing to some nearby bushes and hurling up everything they had eaten earlier that day. By the time they finished, both women looked a little pale, but at least they were alive. I never ever want to do that again. Caulifla exclaimed. Agreed. Kale said before her senses went haywire and she looked around nervously as a bunch of masked people suddenly surrounded them. Who are you? She asked, barely above a whisper. Unlike her companion, Caulifla prepared for a fight, but before she could charge, an old man stepped forward and offered them a kind-hearted smile in an attempt to calm them. After a brief moment, however, his smile turned into a frown and he looked past them at their ruined spaceship. I don't know who you two are, but I can sense that you do not possess chakra. On top of that, we witnessed your vessel falling from the sky. Is it safe to assume that you come from beyond the stars, then? He questioned curiously as he looked between the two women. If so, I'm sure you have just as many questions for me as I have for the two of you. First though, you're looking a little pale. Come with me back to my village and we can get the two of you any medical help you may need. Cat. Immediately a purple-haired Anbu member stepped forward before kneeling before her leader. Yes, Hokage-sama. Looking at the female Anbu, Hiruzen glanced over his shoulder at the wreckage. Collect whatever you can from their ruined vessel and ensure that no one comes near here. I don't want Danzo getting his hands on any alien technology. There's no telling what that rotten bastard would do with it. As you command, Hokage-sama. Kat said before motioning to a few of her fellow Anbu to assist her in her task. Caulifla and Kale could only watch as the masked individuals began to comb the wreckage of their ruined spaceship. After a moment, however, they both turned to the old man and nodded to him before they followed after him. As they approached the villager proper, Caulifla couldn't find it in herself to be silent any longer. Narrowing her eyes suspiciously at the old man in front of her, she decided to question his motives. Old-timer, why are you so willing to help us like this? What exactly do you want? Quirking a brow, Hiruzen turned to glance over his shoulder and offered the Saiyan a small smile. Let's just say that there's something I'd like to confirm. You see, 16 years ago, a stranger arrived in my village with dark, spiky hair, quite similar to your own. He radiated power, but it was unlike anything in this world. It most definitely wasn't chakra that he possessed. Instead, it felt quite similar to your own energy. We'll talk more about this in private, however, as I don't want too many people overhearing our conversation. Frowning at this, Caulifla looked at her partner, Kale, and nodded her head slowly, giving her a silent message that they'd discuss this revelation later with the old man. It sounded as if another Saiyan had been here, but from the sounds of it, there was definitely something the old man didn't reveal to them. Looking back at the Sandaime Hokage, Caulifla nodded once to signify that she understood. It didn't take much longer after that for them to arrive at the hospital, where they were taken to a room and looked over by a couple of doctors. As they were examined, the more aggressive of the two Saiyans couldn't help but look at Kale, wondering how they would cope being stuck on this strange, new planet. It was quite obvious that they wouldn't be leaving anytime soon. Kale, noticing her partner's look, offered her a tiny smile and nodded to show that she was okay. See Caulifla. Do you think we'll be able to go back home? She questioned uneasily. Before her best friend could answer, Hiruzen took that moment to explain their situation to them as best he could. I'm sorry, but I doubt you two will be able to leave. When Caulifla looked towards him with a nasty scowl on her face, Hiruzen held up a hand to silence her and shook his head. Do not misunderstand me. I have no plans to keep you two here against your will. The simple fact of the matter is that our world currently lacks the technology required to repair your ship. It's quite obvious that it's no longer in any shape to take you anywhere, and without the necessary technology, you're stuck here. I'm sorry. Caulifla's mouth snapped shut at this, and she looked down at her hands, a sullen expression on her face. So we're stuck here. Not exactly what I was hoping to hear, old man. What are we supposed to do then? The aged Sandaime offered her a polite smile as he placed a hand on her shoulder. Like I said before, there's something I'd like to discuss with the two of you. I also have something of a proposition for you both, if you'd be willing to hear me out. Once you're done here, we'll return to my office and discuss your situation. Alright. Nodding slowly to signify she understood, Caulifla then looked at Hiruzen and offered him a tiny smirk. Mind waiting outside, old timer? I'd rather not show you my unmentionables when these doctors look us over more thoroughly. Chuckling softly, Hiruzen nodded once before turning and walking to the door. Glancing over his shoulder, he offered Caulifla and Kale another small smile. Once you're finished, one of my Anbu will bring you to my office. I'll be waiting. And with that said, he left the room and gave his orders to his Anbu before leaving the hospital. Back in the room, Caulifla could hear sniffling and looked at her dear friend Kale to see her with tears building up in her eyes. Sighing, the stubborn Saiyan spoke up to try and reassure her. Kale, look at me. When she successfully had her fellow Saiyan's attention, Caulifla gave her a small smile. We'll be alright. Even if we're stuck here for the rest of our lives, we'll make it work. Who knows? We might just enjoy it here. You could even think of it as a long vacation if you'd like. Giggling a bit, Kale wiped her tears and offered her sister figure a small smile. Thanks Caulifla. I just hope we'll be okay here. Later, Hokage's office. Now that Caulifla and her friend were seated across from the Hokage in his office, the more vocal of the two folded her arms across her chest and said, alright old timer, we're here. What is it you wanted to discuss with us? Anbu, leave us. He commanded, making sure to wait until they were all out of the room. Once they had left, he activated the silencing seals before looking into Caulifla's eyes. As I said before, someone quite similar to yourselves arrived 16 years ago. He said his name was Karen. I'm not sure if that name rings any bells for you two or not, but suffice it to say, he crash-landed on this planet as well and had no way of returning home. Sighing softly, Hiruzen looked towards the ceiling for a moment as if to gather his thoughts before he returned his gaze to match Caulifla's. My successor, a man by the name of Minato Namikaze, offered him a home here in Konohagakure. This man, Karen, was offered a position in our armed forces, otherwise known as shinobi. Whether that means anything to you or not, it's important to know that the people of this planet are trained as assassins, infiltrators, saboteurs, the works. We hire out our services to people in need and perform such a wide variety of tasks that it's safe to compare us to mercenaries in a sense. I see. So Saiyan, like us, went to work for your village as one of these shinobi. That had to have been interesting. Caulifla said softly. What's your point though? Chuckling softly, the old Hokage replied with, if you'll be patient, I'll explain. He chastised her gently. Karen met and fell in love with a fiery woman by the name of Kushina Uzumaki. Originally, Minato-kun had taken an interest in her, but they never got together. Instead, Kushina's heart belonged to Karen. I married the two of them and was more than happy when it was revealed that Kushina was pregnant with Karen's child. She was ecstatic and couldn't wait to give birth to her son. However, tragedy struck on the night that she gave birth. Sighing heavily, Hiruzen withdrew his pipe from one of his desk drawers and lit it before taking a drag. Blowing a bit of smoke into the air, he shook his head sadly. You see, Kushina was what we call a Jinchuriki, or power of human sacrifice. There are entities on this world known as Biju, or tailed beasts. She housed the most powerful of them all, the Kyuubi. On the night of her birth, the Kyuubi escaped from the seal on her stomach and tried to destroy the village and its people. There's no way to truly kill a Biju, I'm afraid. So my successor, Minato-kun, sealed the Kyuubi within Karen's son, Naruto Uzumaki, thus making him the third Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi. Karen and Kushina perished on that night, protecting their newborn son from the Kyuubi's attempt to kill him. Ever since then, Naruto-kun has grown up alone, shunned by the community because of what he holds. It's interesting, however. Naruto has two energy sources within him. Chakra and the unknown energy that his father and the two of you possess. On top of that, he's in Uzumaki, and his chakra is denser than most people's. He has enormous reserves of both types of energy and has great potential. However, the people of this village do everything they can to stunt his growth. Sadly, he has been assaulted before, despite my best efforts to watch over him and keep him safe. Anyways, the reason I'm telling you all this is because I'd like for you two to train Naruto-kun in the use of this strange energy of yours. He already has a hard time with control due to his high chakra reserves, not to mention the Kyuubi's chakra messing with his control. But this other energy of his, it also interferes with his control as the two energies don't seem to blend together very well. So seeing as you two are about the same age as the graduating class, if not a few years older, I would like to put you two on the same team as young Naruto-kun. You would have to accept the position of a genin, the lowest ranked soldiers in the shinobi corps. But this way you'd be able to learn more about the world you're now a part of and you'd be close to someone like you. What did you call yourselves again? Caulifla sighed and scratched at the back of her neck. We're Saiyans, a warrior race. Most of our people fight to protect people and such, but I never really gave a damn. My crew and I. We just did whatever we wanted. But from the sounds of it, this Uzumaki kid, he's probably only a half Saiyan. Still, I'm interested in seeing just what he can do. You said he recently graduated, right? Well, if Kale's up for it, I'll join your village as one of these shinobi and help the kid out. We Saiyans gotta stick together, right? What do you think, Kale? She asked, turning to her sister figure. Kale found herself frowning in thought for a brief while before she offered Caulifla a crooked smile. I suppose I'm okay with that if you are Caulifla. But I don't know how much help I'd be. Aw, come on Kale. You've got more potential than I do, and you'd be great. You just gotta believe in yourself a little more, that's all. Caulifla praised, trying to pep up her friend. Besides, this could be fun. Plus, at least we won't be on our own here. Now stop worrying and cheer up. Looking back at Hiruzen, Caulifla grinned at him and nodded her head. We're an old-timer. When do we get to meet this kid? Chuckling a bit, Hiruzen rose from his chair and stepped around his desk, placing his hand gently upon Caulifla's shoulder. Tomorrow in the academy at 7 a.m. For now, let's get you a place to stay, as I'm sure you'd like to get some rest. First though, we haven't properly introduced ourselves to one another yet. My name is Hiruzen Sarutobi, the Sandaime Hokage of Konohagakure. It's a pleasure to meet the both of you. Caulifla grinned and nodded her head in agreement. Hiruzen, huh? Nice name. I'm Caulifla and this is Kale. Nice to meet you, old-timer. Chuckling to himself, the old gentleman shook his head in exasperation. You're never going to refer to me as Hokage-sama or even call me by name, are you? Nope. Caulifla exclaimed before giggling a bit. Now, let's get going. I want to settle in for the night and get some rest. It's been a rough day. Nodding his head in understanding, Hiruzen was about to lead them out of the office and towards their new residence before he suddenly remembered something. Before I forget, I need to give you your headbands. You're free to wear them however you'd like, but you'll need them to show that you represent the village of Konoha. Many people wear them on their heads, as you'd expect. Others, however, wear them on their biceps, as a belt, or in some other way. He explained before he went and retrieved a couple of headbands for them. One with a blue sash and the other with a black sash. Handing them over to the Saiyans, he was about to ask them to follow him before he remembered something else. Palming his face, he looked at the two of them and smiled somewhat awkwardly. I must be getting more forgetful in my old age. I never asked you to explain this energy of yours. Chuckling, Caulifla nodded her head before she looked into Hiruzen's eyes. We use an energy called Kai. It can be used for all kinds of different things such as firing blasts of Kai at our enemies to allowing us to fly through the sky or any number of different uses. Personally, I just enjoy blowing shit up sometimes with Kai blasts and some of my truly big attacks. It's fun. The ability to fly, you say? That sounds quite useful. Hiruzen said as he stroked his beard. If only we shinobi could make use of such a potent energy source, it would make things easier on us. Still, chakra is quite the potent energy source as well, however there are some drawbacks. Oh? Care to explain, old-timer? Caulifla questioned, a curious expression on her face. Retaking his seat behind his desk, the aged Sandame Hokage nodded slowly as he steepled his fingers in front of his face. Well, chakra is a combination of our physical and spiritual energies. However, we have something called a chakra circulatory system. Think of it like your regular circulatory system with blood pumping along your veins and arteries, and then imagine an extra layer atop of that. Anyways, we can suffer from something called chakra exhaustion if we use up too much of our chakra or have it stolen from us in some way. And if we run out of chakra, we'll die. It is that important to our way of life. Every living being in the elemental nations has chakra, though most civilians only have enough chakra to get through their basic day-to-day lives. They never tap into their chakra and use it for any other purpose besides to continue living. Here is an explained. Is this energy of yours, Kai, the same? Shaking her head, Caulifla offered him a wry grin. Nah, if we use up our Kai, we won't die or anything like that. We'll just be absolutely exhausted and won't be able to do much with it until our reserves recharge. This chakra stuff, however, sounds kinda interesting. The drawbacks kinda suck, but it sounds kinda neat. I can't wait to see what you people can do with it. I bet we could have some pretty awesome fights too. Chuckling softly, the elderly Saratobi nodded his head before he rose from his chair once again and motioned for them to follow him. You'll get to see a wide variety of techniques that chakra allows us to perform. People can spit fireballs, walk on water, any number of things using chakra. If you're that eager to fight some strong opponents, however, I wouldn't mind setting up some sparring partners for the both of you. You might be surprised at how strong some of my shinobi are. On top of that, when out on missions that take you out into the world, I'm positive you'll meet plenty of strong shinobi to fight. For now, however, let's get you two settled in. I'm sure you like it here. The next day, Academy. As Caulifla and her partner were escorted into the academy building, the two 16-year-old Saiyans looked into one another's eyes before nodding slowly. Caulifla secretly hoped that by going through with this that it would help Kale in the long run. She was timid and shy and was only really comfortable in her presence. The more assertive of the two Saiyans wanted to get Kale to come out of her shell and buck up a bit. Hopefully by fighting some strong opponents and being around these people, she'd get better. As they approached the door leading into the classroom where the newly graduated students were located, the Anbu escorting them held up a hand, motioning for them to wait a moment. Caulifla and Kale watched as he entered the room and spoke with the instructor, a man that they had been informed was called Iruka Yamino. Looking at her best friend, Caulifla offered her a small smile as she placed a hand on her shoulder. Are you ready for this, Kale? We're about to meet our fellow Saiyan for the first time. I'm eager to see what he's like. How about you? Kale smiled somewhat awkwardly before she nodded her head. I just hope he's nice. I'm nervous about this. What if I'm not cut out for this? Aw, you worry too much, Kale. You'll be fine. I promise that no matter what, I'll always be here for you. As for Naruto, I'm sure he'll become a great friend. After all, he's a Saiyan too, and we've gotta stick together, right? The timid Saiyan nodded her head slowly before jumping a bit as they were called into the room. Shuffling her feet a bit, she followed her more assertive partner into the room and looked around at all the newly minted genin in the room. It didn't take her long to spot her fellow Saiyan sitting in the topmost row by himself, away from his fellow graduates. Naruto had spiky black hair and deep violet eyes. He had 6 whisker-like markings, 3 on each cheek. Even though Naruto was seated, they could both tell that he was a bit taller than the two of them were. As he looked at them, they watched as his eyes widened fractionally and realized that he could sense they were like him. Kale offered him a shy smile, Caulifla folded her arms across her chest and grinned up at him, earning a grin in return. Well, would you two care to introduce yourselves to the class? Iruka questioned, bringing their attention to himself. Caulifla's grin never left as she nodded at the man. Turning to face the class, she put a thumb against her chest and said, the name's Caulifla. This is Kale. Good to meet ya. Chuckling a bit, Iruka spoke up once more. Why don't you two take a seat next to Naruto-kun? Naruto, raise your hand so they know who you are. He instructed, looking to Naruto as he raised his hand. Thanks, Teach. Caulifla said before she took Kale by the hand and walked with her up to the top row. Pushing Kale in front of her, she made her fellow Saiyan sit down in the middle seat before sitting down next to her. Naruto Uzumaki, right. We've heard about you from the Hokage. I'm looking forward to seeing what you can do. Naruto found himself grinning as he looked at the two of them. However, as he looked at Kale, he couldn't help but frown for a moment. You okay? You're looking a little pale. Kale glanced at Naruto shyly before looking at Caulifla for support. Sighing to herself, Caulifla decided to explain. Kale's shy. Don't worry, once she gets to know you better, I'm sure she'll be more open with you. Kale, at least say hello, okay? The timid Saiyan looked at Naruto for a moment before smiling weakly at him. Hi Naruto. And nice to meet you. Placing a gentle hand on Kale's shoulder to show his support, the violet-eyed young man smiled kindly at her. Nice to meet you Kale-chan. I hope we can be good friends. Before any more could be said, Haruka clapped his hands to get everyone's attention. However, before he could speak, a pink-haired girl spoke up. Haruka-sensei, why are these two here? They didn't graduate with us. We don't even know anything about them. Haruka sighed before looking up at the three Saiyans for a moment, as if he was debating on what to tell the class. Looking at Sakura, who was seated next to a young man by the name of Sasuke Uchiha, he began to explain, Sakura, Caulifla and Kale are special cases. Hokage-sama has permitted them to join as newly minted genin, just as you all are. Now, if there are no more questions, allow me to begin with team assignments. Team 1. As the academy instructor began to list off the teams, Naruto and his fellow Saiyans tuned him out for the time being, so they could chat a bit. So, you two are like me, right? I can't sense any chakra in you, but you possess an energy similar to mine. Just who are you? He whispered. Caulifla smirked at him before she answered. You're right, we don't possess chakra. I promise we'll explain later, away from all these people. Suffice it to say, however, that we have a lot to talk about Naruto. For now, let's listen for team placements. Nodding his head in understanding, Naruto tuned back in when Haruka got to Team 7. Team 7 consists of Sasuke Uchiha, Sakura Haruno, and Yakumo Kurama. Your sensei is Kakashi Haddock. Haruka said, though it was easy to see he had expected for Naruto, the class clown, to be a member of that team. With a shrug, Haruka continued on. Team 8 is Kiba Inuzuka, Hinata Hyuga, and Shino Aburam. Your sensei is Kurina Yuhi. Team 9 is still in circulation, so moving on to Team 10. Ino Yamanaka, Shikamaru Nara, and Choji Akimichi. Your sensei is Asuma Sarutobi. Finally we have Team 11, consisting of Naruto Uzumaki, Caulifla, and Kale. Your sensei is Anko Mitarashi. Good luck. He said, chuckling a bit afterwards. Anyways, you're free to do as you like for the next hour. After that, make sure to be back here as your senseis will be arriving to pick all of you up. Haruka explained before he gathered his things and left the room. Before Caulifla or Kale could say anything to Naruto, someone approached them and began to speak. Man, it's a shame you ladies are stuck with Naruto, of all people. The dope can't even form a proper clone. Here's hoping he doesn't get you killed on your first mission out of the village. Looking at the person that spoke, Caulifla narrowed her eyes at the boy. He was somewhat scruffy in appearance and had red markings on his face with shaggy brown hair. On top of his head was his pet dog who simply barked once at them. You shouldn't underestimate him. Naruto's got a lot of potential, unlike you. Now why don't you shoo and leave us alone? She suggested, waving her hand dismissively at him. Naruto? Potential? Really? Kiba barked out a laugh. Whatever you say babe. When you want to get with a real man, just know I'm always available. He said before returning to his teammates. Hale frowned as she watched the Inuzuka male leave. Looking back at Naruto, she couldn't help but voice a question to him. He's rather rude, isn't he? Just how do you put up with him, Naruto? Sighing to himself as he ran a hand through his spiky black hair, Naruto looked calmly into her eyes and gave a shrug of his shoulders. I'm used to that kind of treatment by now. It's just how things are when it comes to me. People treat me like crap all the time and I've just learned to deal with it. It's best to just ignore people when they get like that. For now, let's put that aside and go someplace where we can talk in private. I'm eager to learn more about my new teammates. Caulifla nodded her head and stood up before motioning for her teammates to follow her. As they neared the door, she couldn't help but notice a girl watching them closely. Tilting her head slightly as she looked at the girl, the Saiyan woman was about to say something before she shook her head and decided against it. Instead, she left the room, followed by Kale and then Naruto. After a short while, they arrived on the roof of the academy building and sat down facing one another. Before we begin, what was with that girl looking at us like that? Caulifla questioned curiously. Sighing as he rubbed at the back of his head, Naruto shrugged his shoulders again. That's Hinata Hyuga. She's had a crush on me for a while, but I'm not really sure how I should feel about her. Most likely she was just trying to size you two up and make sure you weren't planning to steal me from her. Honestly, I'm not really sure what to think of her. I'm flattered, sure, but after all the shit I've been through, I just dunno. Besides, her clan consists of a bunch of that treat me like shit. I'm not interested in dealing with their crap any more than I have to already. Nodding her head in understanding, Caulifla looked into Naruto's eyes for a while before offering him a smile. So, I'm sure you have questions for us. I suppose the best place to start would be telling you that we aren't human. We're from a planet pretty far away called Sadala. We're what you'd call saiyans, a warrior race that fights to protect other worlds and people. Of course, I don't really give a damn about any of that crap. I just love a good fight, and the stronger an opponent, the more fun I get to have. You, Naruto, are the son of a Saiyan and a human, making you the first half Saiyan I've ever met. That's why you have two different kinds of energy within you. Chakra, the energy the people of this planet have, and Kai, which is the most common type of energy you'll find out there in the great big universe. At first, naturally, Naruto was a bit skeptical of what he had just been told. However, as he took the time to think on it, he came to the understanding that it made a great deal of sense, as funny as that sounded. So, folding his arms across his chest, he frowned and thought for a moment before offering Caulifla a smile. If you're telling me the truth, then would you come to this planet? 'Cause I'm damn sure you didn't know about me before you came here. Chuckling a bit, Caulifla shook her head before shrugging her shoulders. Kale and I were on a vacation of sorts, just touring the universe really. Unfortunately, we kind of crash landed outside the village. Needless to say, we can't exactly leave your planet anymore, so we're stuck here. The Hokage offered us a place in the village as a couple of genin, Suoya. He told us about you and asked that we teach you how to use your Kai. So, grats Naruto, you've got the great Caulifla as your instructor in everything Kai related. At first Naruto found himself smirking at the thought of getting stronger thanks to these two, but after a moment he frowned again and looked hard into their eyes. Did the old man tell you anything about who my parents were? 'Cause I've asked him before, but he hasn't told me a damn thing. Weird. You'd think he'd have told you something about your parents. Caulifla stated as she folded her arms across her chest, having the wonderful effect of pushing up her breasts a bit. From what he told us, your father was a Saiyan named Karen. Your mom was some woman called Kushina Uzumaki. Apparently she was the second Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi, which you now hold in your gut. She said, pointing towards his stomach. Not sure why you were used to seal that thing, but whatever. Second Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi, huh? Well damn. It's sorta like a family heirloom then, only the damn thing's a giant furball with extraordinary power at its disposal. Naruto joked. Not happy that the old man wouldn't tell me anything about them, and I'm even more pissed that he didn't tell me about the Kyuubi. I had to find out from a damn traitor called Mizuki. He used to be an instructor here before I had to kick his ass. Damn, that's harsh. You'd think the Hokage would have told you at least about the Kyuubi being stuck in your gut. I mean, it's kind of important, right? Sighing, Naruto shook his head before offering them a smile. I don't really care anymore. Tell me, what's it like out there? What's it all like? Caulifla grinned and wrapped an arm around Kale. Well. An hour later. Team 11 couldn't help but groan as one as they were annoyed by a few of the other graduates for one reason or another. Hinata was determined to investigate the two female members of the team, while Sakura tore into Naruto for some reason that he honestly couldn't fathom. Sakura, just go away already. Naruto said, beyond irritated at this point. Scowling at him, Sakura would have said more, but one of the windows exploded inwards as a small ball landed in the room before it burst apart, a banner soon appearing near the front of the room. Looking at it, they saw that it read, the sexy and single Anko Mitarashi-sama. Blinking in stupefaction at this, they watched as a woman appeared before the banner. The woman had purple hair held up in a pineapple fashion similar to Shikamaru's hairdo. She had brown, pupil-less eyes and wore a large grin on her face as she looked around at everyone in the room. Her attire was interesting, at least to the members of Team 11. She wore a mesh bodysuit under a large tan trench coat and wore a skirt that went to just above her knees. On her feet she wore the traditional shinobi sandals, and around her neck was a necklace that had a single snake fang dangling from it. Alright brats, where's my team? Rising from their seats, the members of Team 11 smirked down at Anko before they made their approach. So you're Anko-sensei, huh? We should get along well. Naruto said. Looking at her three genin, Anko grinned a bit wider before she motioned for them to follow her. As they left the room, they saw some of the other sensei approaching the room. Nodding at them and greeting, Anko soon led her team out of the academy and in the direction of one of her favorite places in the village, the dango shop. As they walked along, the two Saiyan women couldn't help but notice the glares sent Naruto's way. Frowning at this, Kale stepped up to Naruto's side and looked at him cautiously for a moment. How can you deal with all of this? They keep glaring at you and saying things. Sighing softly, Naruto placed a gentle hand on Kale's shoulder before smiling at her sadly. I'm so used to it by now that I just don't care anymore. They hate me simply because of what I am. Yes, it used to bother me a lot, but I decided a while ago that I don't need to bother with them. If they can't accept me as a member of this village and as a person, then why should I give a shit about any of them? For a short while, I once considered doing everything I could to earn their respect and admiration, simply because I didn't like how they were treating me and I wanted things to be different. But there's really no point in it. Let them hate me. So long as they don't try anything again, I'm content to just leave them alone. Hale frowned deeper than before as she listened to what the people were saying. Slowly, she shuffled a bit closer to Naruto and reached out for his hand before quickly retracting her hand, unable to bring herself to take his hand in hers. She wanted to be supportive of him, but she was still a shy, timid mess. Seeing this, Caulifla smirked, figuring she'd tease her friend later. Before she could say anything to either of her teammates, they arrived at their destination and entered the small building. Anko grinned as she led her team to a booth, sitting down next to Naruto, while the two full-blooded saiyans sat across from them. When a waiter came by to ask what they'd like, the quartet placed their orders before looking at one another. "Alright you three, I've heard a bit about you and your situation from Hokage-sama. I've heard that you two use a different energy from what we typically use, so mind explaining in a bit more detail, so I know what to expect from you?" Anko questioned. Taking a deep breath and releasing it slowly, Caulifla folded her arms across her chest again and began her explanation on Kai, its uses, and generally giving an in-depth explanation about what exactly Kai was. As she talked, their food was delivered to their table and the quartet began eating, though Caulifla continued with her explanation. By the time she had finished, Anko was grinning. "Damn, kinda wish I could use this Kai energy now. Sounds like it would be pretty useful." "Oh, it is. Plus, the ability to fly is pretty neat." Caulifla exclaimed before she popped a dumpling into her mouth and chewed for a while. After swallowing, she nodded once. "Hey, this stuff's pretty good. Trust me, there's a lot of delicious food in this world. I'm sure you two will enjoy everything you get to eat," Naruto said with a grin. "Now, you told me before that I have Kai as well. Will you two really teach me how to use it?" "That's the plan. The old-timer wanted us to stick together and asked us to train you in the usage of your Kai. From what I can sense, you've got a lot of it, but it's pretty much untapped potential right now. I'm guessing you've used your chakra pretty much exclusively, haven't you Naruto?" Caulifla questioned, receiving a nod in confirmation of her assessment. "Well, we'll have to teach you how to draw on your Kai energy before anything else. Considering the fact that you have two separate energy sources within you, it might be kinda difficult at first, but once you get the hang of it, then we can teach you how to fly and fire Kai blasts and all kinds of wonderful things. Plus, there's a bunch of stuff about the Saiyan race that I need to tell you about, Naruto." Anko chose this moment to speak up, a small, barely noticeable frown on her face. "So, you two really are from another world then? You're gonna have to explain all of that to me in detail later. For now, we need to go over introductions and the usual jazz about how you aren't really genin yet and whatever." Naruto's eyes widened as he turned to look at his new sensei. "Wait, what? What do you mean we aren't genin?" The violet-haired Kunoichi looked at Naruto and quirked a brow. "What? You didn't really expect that academy crap to be it, did you? No, the real test is held by the Jonin sensei of each team. Most of them are pretty much guaranteed to fail, but that's to be expected. The academy just isn't the same as it used to be, so a lot of your fellow graduates just aren't prepared for this lifestyle," Anko explained. "Now, ignoring that, let's get introductions underway. I'll show you how it's done, Suo, here we go," she exclaimed before pointing a thumb at her chest and grinning. "The name's Anko Mitarashi. I'm a sexy badass that's looking forward to teaching you three. I like dango, my friends, a variety of sweets, and snakes. I dislike my old sensei, Orochimaru team. I also dislike rapists and punks that don't know when to shut their damn mouths. I also dislike creeps that target my friends. Have to admit I also dislike that Asuma Saratobi guy for hitting on Kurenai so much. She's mine damn it." Clenching her fists, she soon shook her head and continued on. "Anyways, I've got a few hobbies, my favorite of which is torturing the poor bastards brought into T&I. Finally, my dream? Meh, I suppose my biggest dream is to kill Orochimaru and get this damn hickey of doom removed," she said, rubbing at the mark on her neck. "Naruto, why don't you go next, And don't try to feed me any of that fake bullshit either, because I'll know." "I wasn't planning on it Anko-sensei. That part of me I want to say it is mostly gone. My name, as you know, is Naruto Uzumaki. I like ramen, training and the few friends I've actually got. What I dislike." He paused for a second here as he considered his dislikes. "I dislike being lied to. I used to dislike what the villagers thought of me and why they were like that, but now I just don't give a damn. I don't like the 3 minutes it takes to heat up ramen. As for hobbies I know it's not entirely healthy, but I like training. Maybe a little too much, but not like those green guys." At this Naruto paused and shuddered as he remembered his friend, Rock Lee, and his friend Sensei. Dreams for the future were next, right? Well, I used to dream of wanting to be the Hokage. I'm not sure if I want that anymore. What I do hope for though is to become friends with Kale-chan and Caulifla-chan here and learn about my race. Hell, I'd even love to travel through space and meet all kinds of other races, including others of my kind. I know that's pretty much a pipe dream though, considering our world lacks the technology required to craft a spaceship. Naruto admitted with a sigh. Anko nodded in understanding of this before turning to Caulifla. Alright, it's your turn cauliflower. She said, a grin on her face, waiting to see if she could get a rise out of the Saiyan. Twitching, Caulifla looked into Anko's eyes and snarled for a moment before thrusting a finger in her face. The name's Caulifla. I like fighting. A lot. The stronger an opponent is and the more thrilling the fight, the happier I am. I also like my gang, especially Kale. I also like the food I've tried on this planet, so that's a plus. Dislikes are next, right? Receiving a nod in confirmation, Caulifla folded her arms across her chest and looked up as if in thought. I dislike boring shit, especially a boring fight. I also dislike people picking on Kale. Mess with her and you're fucked. I also dislike weaklings hitting on me and Kale. Hobbies. Training and fighting are my hobbies, I suppose. Dreams. Meh, I haven't really given it much thought. I suppose I'd like to be the toughest bitch out there in the known universe. That's something to aspire towards, right? Chuckling a bit, Anko nodded her head and grinned at the 16-year-old Saiyan. Damn right, that's a worthy goal. I'll do whatever I can to help you achieve that goal of yours. Now, Kale looking towards the timid Saiyan, Anko offered her a kind smile and said, why don't you introduce yourself? The timid yet beautiful Saiyan fidgeted a bit but soon looked into Anko's eyes and nodded her head once. Oh okay. My name is Kale. I like caulifla, animals, flowers, and some other things. I dislike anyone that speaks bad about caulifla. I dislike that I'm so worthless and unable to really help caulifla in any way. I have a few hobbies I suppose. I like collecting cute things, such as stuffed animals and cute little keychains and other things. I also like flower pressing. Dreams. I'm not as sure. I want to be more useful to caulifla, and I suppose now that I'd like to be helpful to Naruto. I also want to get stronger. Caulifla frowned at her friend and shook her head. Kale, how many times do I have to tell you that you aren't useless to me? I trust you with my life. You're my most important friend for crying out loud. We're really going to have to work on your confidence, Kale. Naruto smiled at Kale and patted her on the shoulder. It's okay, Kale-chan. We're here for you, and I promise you're going to get tougher and gain more confidence by the time we're through with you. Besides, we Saiyans gotta stick together, right? Anko grinned at her 3 precious genin before standing to her feet. Alright, with introductions out of the way, I want you 3 to head on home and get some rest. You're to meet me at training ground number 44, otherwise known as the Forest of Death, tomorrow morning bright and early. We'll hold your test there. See you later, kiddos. She exclaimed before vanishing in a body flicker. As soon as Anko was gone, Naruto scowled and looked at his female teammates. Great. She's left us to pay the tab. Damn cheapskate. Naruto said with a sigh. I'm assuming you two don't have any of this world's currency on hand, do you? Receiving negative shakes of the head from both of them, the black-haired youth sighed again before digging out his wallet and placing down enough money to pay for the food and drink they had ordered. Afterwards, he stood up from his chair and looked at the girls. Well, wanna hang out for a while? We can even train for a bit if you want. Grinning at her new friend and fellow Saiyan, Caulifla stood up and punched one of her hands into the other. I like the sound of that. Come on Kale, let's go have some fun tearing up one of those training grounds. Nodding slowly, Kale stood up as well before smiling awkwardly at her friends. I hope I don't let you two down. Sighing at this, Caulifla flicked Kale in the forehead lightly before wrapping an arm around her shoulders. Stop being such a downer, Kale. You'll do great. Now let's go. Chuckling a bit, Naruto led the way out of the shop and towards a training ground he frequently used. He was eager to see exactly what his new friends were capable of. This should be fun. Later that night. The 3 Saiyans were surprised when they returned to Naruto's apartment complex. The reason behind their surprise is the fact that they were next-door neighbors, Caulifla and Kale living in the apartment just next door to Naruto's apartment. Sure, it wasn't the greatest building in the world, and half of the time shit didn't work how it was supposed to, such as the water heater crapping out on Naruto when he goes to take a shower, but it was still nice to see his new friends living in the same building as him. At first, they were content to just wish each other a good night and sweet dreams, but Caulifla frowned and invited herself into Naruto's apartment, Kale following immediately afterwards, as she didn't want to be without a familiar face all by herself. Sitting down on his couch, Caulifla looked into Naruto's eyes and frowned. Naruto, this building's a dump. I love the fact that we're in the shadier part of Konoha, but I think you need to talk to the Hokage about a new home for the 3 of us. Hell, your parents might have even left a home for you that the old-timer hasn't told you about. Not sure why he's keeping secrets from you, but it's not really any of my business. I just know I'd prefer to have somewhere nice to live rather than this dump. Wouldn't you? The violet-eyed Saiyan nodded slowly before walking into the kitchen and began cooking something up for the 3 of them. I dunno either, but I'm sick of him lying to me. First he lied about why I'm so hated by everybody, and then he continues to lie about not knowing my parents. Makes it pretty damn hard to trust him. So if he refuses to give me my inheritance from my parents, I'll just have to do something about it. Cause let's face it, I'm sick of living a shitty life because of his poor decisions. Before Caulifla could say anything, she found herself quirking a brow as Kale stepped up beside Naruto and smiled bashfully at him. "See, can I help you cook in Naruto?" Looking into Kale's eyes, the taller Saiyan nodded slowly and began to instruct her on how to cook the dish he was currently making. As they got to work, Kale gradually growing more comfortable with Naruto, Caulifla couldn't help but smirk to herself. Having him around is going to do wonders for Kale. I'm glad. The next morning, Forest of Death. The Saiyans were looking past a large fence into the dark forest, each of them listening to the various sounds that came from within. Each of them could sense that there were some rather powerful creatures in the Forest of Death, and the two, more energetic Saiyans, were pumped up, eager to get in there and kick some ass. Kale was a bit more reserved though, and couldn't help but fidget nervously as she listened to the sounds the animals were making. After about half an hour of waiting, Anko finally showed up and they turned to face her, Caulifla and Naruto both grinning at her, their excitement rolling off them in waves. "So what's our test, Anko-sensei? Do we get to go in there and kick some ass?" Naruto exclaimed eagerly. Chuckling softly to herself, the violet-haired Kunoichi shook her head. "Patience, Naruto-kun. Patience." She chastised him. "Your test is simple enough. I've hidden 3 objects of great importance within the Forest of Death. Find them, survive whatever might lie in wait, and return here with all 3 objects before 2 hours are up and I might officially accept you as my team. Just be warned that the forest is an incredibly dangerous place and you might encounter some interesting situations in there. Do have fun now," she exclaimed before she hopped the fence and dashed into the dark forest. Looking at his teammates, Naruto smirked and said, "Well, what are we waiting for? Let's get in there and have some fun." Giggling a bit, Caulifla nodded her head before she hopped the fence with Naruto and Kale following immediately afterwards. This is going to be awesome. Chapter 2: A Mission to the Land of Waves. You know, now that I think on it, how are we supposed to find these 3 items she's hidden within just 2 hours? This forest is huge. Caulifla asked as they came to a stop in a small clearing. Kale looked between her 2 fellow Saiyans and decided to offer up a suggestion. You and me can fly around, looking for the items. But that leaves Naruto alone." Naruto shook his head and held up a hand to stop them from doing anything. "Well, that might help, it would only hinder us in the long run and likely cause us to fail the test anyway. The village prides itself on teamwork amongst allies. This test is likely meant to test us as a team rather than as an individual. Besides that, I have a better idea. Shadow clone technique." In an instant, hundreds of Naruto clones appeared in the clearing and, without a word, they each departed in a different direction, some working in pairs or groups of 3, while others set out on their own. Looking back at his new friends, he couldn't help but smirk as he saw their shocked expressions. Caulifla, unable to grasp what had just happened, grabbed Naruto by the shoulders and looked him dead in the eyes. "What the hell was that just now? How the hell did you create so many clones?" The violet-eyed youth chuckled a bit and reached up, tapping his forehead once. "I have a ton of chakra. What I just used is a technique known as the shadow clone technique. It's a chakra-intensive technique and most people can only make 1 or 2 clones at most. Any more and they might end up killing themselves. As for why I made so many this time, it's simple. When a shadow clone dispels, the user gets their memories. So, once they find the items we're looking for, all they have to do is dispel, and we'll be good. Of course, if too many dispel at once, it'll be like I've suffered whiplash or something similar. I could even end up in a temporary coma, unfortunately. The brain can only handle so much information at once, after all." Kale looked incredibly worried after hearing this. But that's dangerous. You could be really hurt, and Naruto-kun. Doesn't that worry you?" Naruto offered her a warm smile and walked over to her, gently pulling her into a hug, much to her embarrassment. "It's alright, Kale-chan. I'll be alright." They know to dispel slowly, in small groups of 5 at once. Besides that, we've only got 2 hours to finish this test, so I went with the quickest method I could think of. The timid Saiyan blushed furiously, but made no effort to remove herself from Naruto's embrace. Instead, she rested her head against his chest and tentatively hugged him back, relishing in the feeling of warmth she got from the hug. "Alright, enough of that," Caulifla said, breaking them apart. "As sweet a moment as that was, we've got a job to do. Any luck with the clones yet, Naruto?" Naruto started to shake his head, but stopped himself as some of the clones' memories began to hit him. Frowning, he looked into Caulifla's eyes and said, "Some have run into problems, let's say. They're being dispelled by the various creatures of the forest, though with their size it's easy to just call them monsters. One group did just find one of the items, but it's sitting under a giant wasp's nest. We'll have to be extremely careful if we want to get that item and get out of there without alerting those wasps to our presence. With their size, it could very likely result in our deaths if we aren't careful. The boisterous Saiyan scoffed at this. I'm not scared of some stupid wasps. Bring 'em on. Hale frowned and shook her head. And no caulifla. I think Naruto-kun is right. It's best not to agitate them if we can help it. Naruto nodded in agreement. That, and I have a feeling this is a test to see how good our stealth is. After all, one of a shinobi's greatest skills is their stealth. How well can they hide and observe the situation? How good are they at sneaking up on their foes and taking them out in an efficient manner? Stealth is vital for any shinobi to know. No, Caulifla-chan, our goal should be to retrieve the item without alerting the wasps to our presence. Though, there is a chance that Anko-sensei will disturb their nest after we've retrieved the item, meaning we may very well have to fight or flee. The feisty female Saiyan frowned and folded her arms across her chest. HMPH. You shinobi don't do anything half-assed, do ya? I don't like the idea of fleeing from a bunch of noisy insects, but I'll defer to your judgment in this case. If we're supposed to be stealthy, then so be it. So come on already and show us to this precious item we're supposed to collect. Naruto nodded and motioned for the female members of the team to follow after him as he hopped onto a branch and began tree hopping in a seemingly random direction. Caulifla didn't hesitate to follow, though she paused a moment to look back at her sister Saiyan, who looked to be fairly nervous. Frowning at this, Caulifla called out, "Come on, Kale. If you don't hurry it up, you're going to be left behind." Kale looked up at her sister and frowned for a moment before giving a nod. Hopping into the tree, she followed after Caulifla and Naruto, though her frown soon returned as she lost herself in her thoughts. I still don't like this. Naruto's risking his own health by using that technique. Sure, it may be helpful, but it's also incredibly dangerous. Caulifla, noticing Kale's disheartened demeanor, slowed her pace and began hopping beside her fellow Saiyan. Kale, talk to me. What's on your mind? The timid teen looked straight ahead at Naruto and said quietly, Naruto's a really nice person, isn't he, sister? The boisterous Saiyan quirked one of her brows as she looked from Kale to Naruto and then back again. You trying to tell me that you're crushing on him already or what? Kale blushed and shook her head. And no. I'm just worried about him. I know we haven't known him for very long, but what we do know worries me. He's been through a lot and now he's using some kind of ninja technique that could really hurt him and I don't like it. This just doesn't feel right. The slightly shorter Saiyan quirked her brow as she looked at Kale, a smirk slowly forming on her face. Sure sounds like you're crushing on him to me. Oh, my little Kale's growing up. She teased. Kale's blush deepened and she punched Caulifla in the arm from the embarrassment. Stop it, Caulifla. Let's just go. We'll pretend I didn't say anything. Okay. She insisted before hurrying off after Naruto, leaving Caulifla to laugh as she tried to catch up. Stupid Caulifla. She doesn't need to tease me. Moments later, when they all stopped on the same branch, Naruto held a finger up to his mouth and motioned for them to be quiet. Afterwards, he pointed up higher into one of the nearby trees. Sure enough, they could hear the buzzing coming from the gigantic wasp's nest. The buzzing was so loud, in fact, that it was beginning to hurt just listening to it. After a moment, Naruto pointed downwards towards the clearing they were above. That's Hokage-sama's pipe. I may not like the bastard for lying to my face all these years, but that thing's important to him. More importantly for us though is that we need to collect that and whatever the other two items are for our test. Stay here, I'll go get it real quick. Before either girl could say anything, the 14-year-old shinobi began descending to the ground below. Kale scowled at this, a rare thing for her to do, and looked into Caulifla's eyes. See why I worry about him now? Caulifla nodded slowly and folded her arms across her chest. He is a bit reckless, isn't he? Then again, I'm not really one to talk. I've done worse, if you recall. Kale giggled a bit at that and nodded in agreement with that statement. You really have, Caulifla. Still, we should, oh dear. Huh? Caulifla looked in the direction Kale was facing and her eyebrow began to twitch. Oh, that bitch. What was the problem, you might ask? Anko had appeared in a tree a short distance from the wasp's nest and was flipping through a series of hand seals in preparation for some kind of technique. The Saiyans both were and were not shocked when fire erupted from her mouth and struck the bottom of the nest. In an instant, huge wasps practically erupted from the nest, but Anko was already gone. Instead, they descended upon Naruto. Looking into her partner's eyes, Caulifla said, come on, we need to help him. We can think about paying that psycho bitch back for this later. Hale quickly followed Caulifla into action, the two of them firing numerous Kai blasts at the wasps, shooting them out of the sky as quickly as they could. However, the wasps down below, Naruto sealed the pipe away in a scroll and pocketed it before turning his attention to the wasps descending upon him. Knew she'd pull something like this. Not much of a choice but to go with what I know. Shadow clone technique. In an instant, hundreds of Naruto clones appeared and began to retaliate against the wasps. Meanwhile, the real Naruto appeared behind Caulifla and Kale and said, "Come on. My clones will distract them so we can get away. There's just too damn many of them to risk staying here and fighting them." "Are you kidding me? Why the hell should we run from these things? If you're scared, you can run away, but I'm going to kick their asses." Caulifla shouted angrily. She was about to attack the wasps again when Kale grabbed her arm. Looking into her best friend's eyes, Caulifla frowned and asked, "What is it, Kale?" Kale shook her head and said, "Please Caulifla, we should leave while we have the opportunity. I know you want to stay and fight, but there are times when running away is a better idea. And Naruto's right. Please." Caulifla scowled, but reluctantly nodded her head. "Fine. Let's go before they target us again. Your clones better be able to hold these shits off, Naruto." Naruto grinned at the feisty Saiyan and said, "Hey, no problem. I put a little something extra into these clones, so as soon as we're a safe distance away from this problem, they'll take care of things. Now, let's go. One of my clones found the second item, so we'll head there now." Kale and Caulifla both nodded and began to follow their fellow Saiyan in another seemingly random direction. When they finally reached the location of the next item, they saw that the entire area was booby-trapped to hell. "Well, this fucking sucks," Caulifla said, sounding pretty annoyed. The timid Saiyan noticed what the item was and frowned in confusion. "Why is this item a book? Is there something special about this book?" Naruto sighed and ran his fingers through his spiky black hair. "That's one of the Hokage's most precious belongings. It's basically a smut book written by one of his students, Jiraiya of the Sannin. Trust me, they're nothing but trash. And yet, perverts absolutely love 'em," he said, shrugging his shoulders. Caulifla waved her hand dismissively and said, yeah, that's all well and good. Now, how do we go about getting the damn thing without setting off a buttload of traps?" The young Saiyan looked around at all the well-placed traps and shrugged his shoulders. "Just leave it to me. All my pranks on the villagers for their bullshit were pretty good at honing my trap-making and disarming skills. I'll get that book, no problem." Sure enough, as they watched Naruto get to work, they were a bit stunned to see how easily disarming the traps was for him. Once he was finished, Caulifla and Kale hopped down, and the boisterous Saiyan woman picked it up and began flipping through it out of pure curiosity. When she saw the pictures and read a few pages, she shook her head in disgust. "Ugh. This is pure garbage. I could write a better book than this shit." Naruto chuckled a bit and nodded his head in agreement. "I'm already working on writing some novels myself. Romance mixed with adventure. Hopefully once I'm finished, they'll sell well enough that I'll be set for a while financially," he said, shrugging his shoulders afterwards. Kale brightened up at this and looked into his eyes with a giddy smile on her face. "You're writing a book, that's amazing. How come you didn't tell us before?" The young man chuckled a bit as he rubbed the back of his head. "Sorry, it just kinda slipped my mind." Caulifla sighed and waved the Hokage's book around. "Okay, enough of that. Where's the next item? By my estimation, we've already been here for about an hour, looking for these things. I'm curious to see what we have to deal with next." Naruto was about to say something when he suddenly clutched his head and groaned out in pain. "Ugh. Crap. I didn't think they'd all dispel at once like that," he said, wincing in agony. Kale quickly placed her hands on his arms and looked into his eyes. "And Naruto-kun? Are you okay?" The violet-eyed youth looked into Kale's worried eyes and offered her a small, strained smile. "I'll be fine, Kale-chan. Something happened to the rest of my clones and they all dispelled at once. One of them did find the last item, though. It's surrounded by a bunch of giant leeches, some large wolves, and other animals. It's like a nest of monsters." Caulifla looked Naruto over and placed a hand upon his head, ruffling his hair a bit. "Just show us where it is and Kale and I will take care of it. You've done enough, Naruto. No need to push yourself too hard." Naruto nodded and began leading them towards the final item. When they finally reached it, the black-haired youth pointed out each of the enemies they'd have to deal with. Then, he looked down at the item and sighed. "That's the Hokage's crystal ball that he uses to spy on people. I know he's used it to spy on me on more than one occasion. He doesn't know that I know about that though." Kale frowned deeply and gently squeezed Naruto's hand. That's wrong. That's an invasion of privacy. He shouldn't do such a thing." Caulifla glared down at the crystal ball and said, "Maybe we should just smash the damn thing if he's going to pull that kind of crap. I'd rather he not look in on the three of us like that." Naruto sighed and shook his head. "If we smash it, we'd be in deep shit. Let's just grab the damn thing and get this test over with. I know I could use some rest after my clones were all dispelled like that. The mental backlash hurts like hell." The feisty Saiyan woman looked at Kale, nodded, and a rare look of seriousness appeared on her face. "Yeah. Let's do this, Caulifla." And with that, the two Saiyan women were off, destroying the animals and insects that had taken up residence in the area. Despite the sheer number of enemies, it had turned into something of a massacre, with the two of them working together to take out all of the enemies. When they were finally finished, Kale picked up the crystal ball and frowned deeply as she stared at it. I don't like this thing. I wish we could just get rid of it. Caulifla glared at the item and nodded her head in agreement. Same. Oh well, let's just go. Anko-sensei is probably waiting for us at the gate. I'd rather not keep the psycho waiting any longer than we have to. As they began making their way back towards the gate where their sensei would be waiting, Kale tentatively reached out and brushed her fingers against Naruto's before gently taking his hand in hers and squeezing it ever so slightly. When he looked her way, she offered him a shy smile and blushed a bit. No words needed to be spoken between them as they just walked together in silence. Caulifla noticed this and couldn't help but smile. Atta girl, Kale. I'm glad you're feeling so comfortable around him. It looks like he's really going to be a positive influence on you. As they neared the gate, they could see their sensei waiting for them with a devilish smirk on her face. Well. Looks like you've got the items and you're looking to be in pretty good shape too. Good job. Caulifla scowled at Anko and pointed a finger at her angrily. You're a psycho. Pissing off those wasps, setting up a ton of freaking traps, and then putting this stupid crystal ball in the middle of a damn monster's nest. Ugh. What were you even thinking? Anko began to chuckle at this point. I was thinking that I needed to really test you to see just what you were capable of. I only knew so much before taking on this team and I felt I needed to get to know you three better. Though Naruto, you're looking a bit worse for wear. You alright? Naruto nodded slowly. I'll be fine. Just have a hell of a headache from most of my clones dispelling at once. It'll pass eventually. Anyways, do we pass, Anko-sensei? The snake mistress nodded and gave them a thumbs up. Yep. We're officially Team 11 starting today. I'd say let's start with your training and take some of those lame D-rank missions, but that seems kinda pointless when you're feeling like that, Naruto. Unless you think you can handle some simple stuff. The whiskered teen frowned and thought for a while before shaking his head. I'd love to say, hell yeah. Let's do it. But honestly, I just don't feel up to doing any of that crap. I think right now, I just need some rest. Anko offered him a smile and patted him on the shoulder. Let me treat you guys to a nice lunch before you head on home to get some sleep. K, Naruto. Naruto smiled and nodded his head. Sounds like a plan to me, Anko-sensei. Thank you. Meh, don't mention it. You deserve to enjoy something good to eat after having to go through all this crap for a lousy test. First though, we need to return this junk to Hokage-sama. I'm sure he's missing his precious stuff. Kinda wish I could just get rid of him though. Anko said with a shrug before leading her team towards the Hokage tower. Caulifla scoffed as she looked at the book in her hands and then at the crystal ball Kale held. This book's complete trash and I don't care for the idea that he can spy on us with that crystal ball of his whenever he wants. I don't give a shit about the pipe, but those two things need to be destroyed. Heh, I agree with you, Caulifla-chan. Sadly, perverts like him love that smutty crap. Trust me, if you ever see a silver-haired man with one eye and his nose buried in one of those books, steer clear of him. Kakashi's a lazy bastard that doesn't deserve his rank if you ask me. Anko said, sounding a bit disgusted at the mere thought of the man. As for the crystal ball, he mainly uses it to spy on Naruto-kun. After all, gotta keep an eye on the village's greatest weapon, right? Kale scowled at this and squeezed Naruto's hand just a bit tighter. That's just not right. Naruto-kun's not just some weapon. He's a person, just like the rest of us. How can they treat him like that? Anko looked back at Kale and shook her head sadly. It's just how Jinchuriki like Naruto-kun are treated in this world. It pisses me off because the villages make them into Jinchurikis, oftentimes without their consent, and then they treat them like trash. They view them as the demons themselves and not as real people. Others like to treat them as weapons that shouldn't have feelings of their own. I've heard that soon as Jinchuriki has had numerous attempts on his life and he's turned into a psychopath because of that shit. And sadly, that's just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to how people treat Jinchuriki. I hate it. Caulifla looked rather pissed, while Kale had a look of shock and horror on her face. Clenching her fists tight, the busty Saiyan looked at Anko and said, I swear to whatever gods you pray to hear that, if they continue to treat Naruto-kun like that, I'll start killing people. I refuse to let him suffer their shit any longer. Naruto frowned at this and shook his head. It won't help, Caulifla-chan. You'll just get in trouble for killing citizens of Konoha. I don't want you to get in trouble because of me. It's best just to ignore the assholes and deal with all the crap as best we can. And also, because I don't think you've had the pleasure of meeting them yet, I'd steer clear of Sasuke Uchiha and his fangirls, especially Sakura Haruno and Ino Yamanaka. Sasuke's a prick that's so damn full of himself, it's a wonder the stick up his ass hasn't penetrated his brain yet. Sakura and Ino though. They're psycho bitches when it comes to their precious Sasuke-kun, trust me when I say this. You're going to hate them. Then again, you're probably going to hate a lot of people in this village. I know I do. Caulifla scowled at this and reached out, taking his free hand in hers. With us here, you won't be alone to deal with their shit anymore. I promise we'll look out for you, Naruto-kun. We Saiyans gotta stick together, after all. Right, Kale? Kale nodded emphatically and looked at her new friend with a smile. Alright. We're with you, Naruto-kun. You'll never have to feel lonely again. Naruto chuckled a bit at this and thanked the both of them. Before he could say anything, however, Anko got their attention. We're here you three. Let's get in there and give the Hokage his stuff back. I'll have to give my report on how you did and let him know you've passed and all that jazz. After that's over and done with, we can go get some food. Sound good? Caulifla grinned and pounded a fist against her chest. Hell yeah. I'm starving. And I'd rather not be around the old man for any longer than I have to be. I know I probably shouldn't say this about the leader of the village, but I don't like him. Don't trust him either. Anko shrugged and said, I don't blame you. Not with all the secrets he's been keeping from Naruto-kun for so damn long. Naruto should have been made aware of the Kyuubi much sooner. He also has the right to know about his parents. But nope, Hokage-sama has to be an asshole about that shit. He's made some awful decisions regarding Naruto-kun and it makes it hard to trust him. I'm not sure what the hell his problem is, but we shouldn't dwell on it for too long. It'll just piss us off the more we think about it. The three Saiyans nodded in understanding before following Anko into the Hokage's office. Once inside, they placed the three valuables on Hiruzen's desk and bowed politely to him, though they did so reluctantly. Sorry about taking these things from you, Hokage-sama. If it helps any, they passed the test pretty much flawlessly, so that's good, right? Hiruzen chuckled a bit and nodded his head. Of course. And don't worry, I'm not upset. I wouldn't have let you take them if I feared they would be lost to me forever. And you say they passed your test. Good to hear. Congratulations, Naruto-kun, Caulifla, and Kale. Thank you, Hokage-sama. Naruto said, while the two female Saiyans remained quiet. Will that be all? My head's killing me and I could really use some rest. The third Hokage frowned and shook his head. I have something to discuss with you, Naruto-kun. Anko. Please take your other genin and leave my office. What we have to discuss is a private matter. Anko frowned at this, but nodded reluctantly. Motioning for the two 16-year-old Saiyans to follow her, she led them out of the office. After they shut the door, Anko looked into the eyes of her fellow women and said, we'll wait for him out here. I have a feeling he's gonna be pretty pissed if my gut isn't lying to me. In the office, Naruto took a seat and stared into the Hokage's eyes. What did you need from me, Hokage-sama? Hiruzen sighed. He knew he had lost any respect Naruto had for him and he was pretty sure he knew why as well. Taking a deep breath and releasing it slowly, he stared hard into Naruto's eyes and said, I know they told you about your parents. I also know you're upset with me about hiding what I have from you. You must understand though that it was in your best interests to maintain those secrets. Scoffing, Naruto glared at the Hokage and said, bullshit. It might have been in your best interests to hide everything from me, but it certainly wasn't in mine. I deserve to know about at least the Kyuubi. I asked you time and time again why I was so despised by the villagers and you lied right to my face every fucking time. And I asked you about my parents so damn often because I knew you knew exactly who they were. It would have been wonderful to know that they at the very least fucking loved me, but no. You wouldn't even give me that comfort. So no, you old bastard, it wasn't in my best interests at all. Hiruzen frowned and shook his head. I'd prefer it if you didn't call me that, Naruto-kun. As your Hokage, I deserve respect. Respect is earned, not given freely, Hokage-sama. And whatever respect I had for you is gone now. If you want my respect again, you'll have to earn it the hard way, just as everyone else has to. Sighing, Hiruzen shook his head and reached into one of the drawers on his desk before pulling out a few letters, a couple of scrolls, and some keys. Sliding them across his desk to Naruto, he said, as you wish, Naruto-kun. Anyways, these are from your parents. As you already know, your father was a Saiyan named Karen. Your mother was the last of her clan, the Uzumakis. Her name was Kushina and she loved your father dearly. When she learned that she was pregnant with you, she was absolutely ecstatic. Your father was proud and couldn't wait for you to be born. Unfortunately, someone infiltrated the village at the time of your birth and pretty much ripped the Kyuubi from your mother. I'm not sure who it was that did it, but whoever it was is responsible for your parents' demise. I'm sorry. Naruto scowled at hearing this and shook his head. My best guess is it was an Uchiha. From what I've read of them, the strongest of them can control the Bijuu if they wanted to. So yeah, I'm pretty sure an Uchiha is responsible for the Kyuubi attack on the village. And then it was sealed into me. I may not have talked to the Kyuubi yet, but I'm sure he's probably pretty pissed off. Just tell me this, Hokage-sama. Did my parents want to seal the Kyuubi into me? Hiruzen shook his head negatively. No, Naruto-kun. Your mother would have rather taken the Kyuubi with her into the grave than make you suffer as its Jinchuriki. Your father wouldn't have allowed it either. But Minato, my successor, chose to seal the beast inside of you instead, much to your parents' protests against such a thing. I honestly don't know if he felt the village needed a weapon or if he was just a naive fool, but what's done is done. You are the third Kyuubi Jinchuriki and as such are important to this village, whether you realize it or not. Frowning at this, Naruto crossed his arms across his chest and said, if I am so damn important to the village, then the least you can do is make sure those villagers treat me with some fucking respect. No, you'd rather let them beat me, humiliate me, and rob me of whatever happiness I deserve. Instead, you told me to forgive them and try to understand where they were coming from. That they didn't know any better and would eventually stop with their shit. How wrong you were, old man. The third Hokage sighed and nodded his head. I know, and I'm sorry, Naruto-kun. If I could go back and do things right, you should believe that I would. I've made my fair share of mistakes, especially regarding you, Naruto-kun. Anyways, I've taken up enough of your time. These are from your parents. I'll guide you and your friends to your new home. I'll send a genin team to your apartment to pack your things and move them into your new home. Follow me, Naruto-kun. As you wish, Hokage-sama. Naruto said as he collected his parents' items and followed the Hokage out of his office. When he saw that his teammates were there waiting for him, he offered a smile and motioned for them to follow after him. The three of them frowned for a moment before shrugging and following after the two men. When they reached the gates that led into Naruto's parents' home, their eyes widened in astonishment. Wow. Anko said as she stared at Naruto's new home. You lucky guy. You get to live someplace awesome. Naruto nodded slowly in agreement before he did as the Hokage instructed and wiped a bit of blood on the seal holding the gate shut. When the gate swung open, he and his friends followed the Hokage up to the front door, where Naruto quickly unlocked it with one of the keys he now possessed. Upon stepping inside, the members of Team 11 were shocked to see that everything appeared to be in perfect shape, almost as if it hadn't aged a day. Seeing their shock, Hiruzen smiled and said, your mother was a master of seals, Naruto-kun. Making a seal to preserve everything in the house was child's play for her. I'm sure you'll soon come to realize the usefulness of Fuinjutsu, as I'm quite sure she's left plenty of materials for you to work with. I'm sure that, with enough time, you'll become a Fuinjutsu master that surpasses even your mother in the art. Naruto nodded slowly and looked at Hiruzen in the eyes. Thanks old man. I appreciate it. My team and I were going to go get some lunch. Can you wait until afterwards to hire the genin team for me, please? Of course, Naruto-kun. You deserve to enjoy a celebratory meal with your friends. Just come inform me when you're finished and I'll send a genin team out to collect your things. Alright. Thanks Hokage-sama. Come on ladies, let's go get some grub. Naruto exclaimed, throwing his fist into the air with a grin on his face. But that being said, the Hokage walked them out and instructed Naruto on how to reseal the gate so nobody but Team 11 could get in. Once they were finished, Hiruzen bid them goodbye and returned to his office, leaving Team 11 to go and get some grub as Naruto had said. The next day. I swear to Kami that if this rotten cat scratches me one more fucking time, I'll kill the damn thing. I don't care who the little bastard belongs to. Caulifla screeched, clearly pissed off beyond belief. Yes, Team 11 was on the infamous Tora capture mission. So far, Naruto and Caulifla had been scratched by the little beast numerous times. So when Kale walked up a moment later with Tora purring contently in her arms, both Saiyans glared at her, causing her to freeze momentarily. How? Naruto asked simply. Kale shrugged her shoulders and said, she seems to like me. Maybe a gentle approach is the best. Anko appeared a moment later and nodded her head. Always best to be gentle with the little rascal. Just chasing the little brat around and scaring her won't get you anywhere. Naruto sighed and nodded slowly. You're probably right. Anyways, let's go return Tora and get paid for this crappy job. I'm with ya. Screw this damn cat. And you say this little beast runs away from its owner all the damn time? What's up with that, huh? Caulifla asked, sounding very frustrated. Anko sighed and said, trust me, you'll understand soon enough. Hokage's office moments later. When they saw the overweight woman known as Madame Shijimi squeezing the life out of Tora, Team 11 had mixed emotions. On the one hand, they felt the little shit deserved it. However, on the other, they couldn't help but feel for the poor thing. Hale, unable to handle it anymore, walked up to the woman and got her attention. Please ma'am, stop that. Tora doesn't like being squeezed to death like that. You need to be gentler with her. Here, let me show you. Taking Tora from the daimyo's wife, Kale cradled her against her body and began to gently scratch behind her ears. When Tora began purring contently once again, Kale began to softly pet her until the cat fell asleep in her arms. See, Madam Shijimi. Try a gentler approach and she won't run away so often. Tora's actually a really good girl, but she runs away because you're far too rough with her. Madam Shijimi took Tora back from Kale and looked her cat in the eyes. Is that right, Tora? Has mommy been too rough on you? I'm sorry, sweetie. She said before gently petting Tora, just as Kale had shown her. When Tora nestled into her arms and purred, the overweight woman smiled happily and looked at Kale thankfully. Thank you. What's your name, sweetie? Hey Kale, ma'am. My name is Kale. Very good then. For your help in understanding my precious Tora, I'm going to make sure you get paid 10 times as much as what I would usually pay for such a mission. Thank you again, Kale-chan. Kale blushed a bit and smiled at the woman. Thank you, Madam Shijimi. I really appreciate that. Of course. Now, Hiruzen. Make sure you treat this girl and her team right. I couldn't be prouder of them. She said before turning and making her way out of Hiruzen's office. Once she was gone, the Hokage looked at Kale thankfully and said, thank you, Kale. We shouldn't be receiving any more missions to capture Tora from this point forward, I believe. Just as she said, you will be paid richly for your services. Now, are there any other missions you would like to undertake, Anko-chan? Not today, Hokage-sama. I'd like to get some training in before we do anything else. Besides, you can only handle so many D ranks a day. Lazy ass civilians, refusing to do shit for themselves. Hiruzen chuckled a bit at that. They do seem to believe we shinobi are here to service them, rather than what we're really meant for. They have become arrogant and stupid over the years, I'm afraid. I just wish I knew what to do to fix the mess this has all become. Man up and do what needs to be done. It's as simple as that, Hokage-sama. You used to be quite a fearsome person, to friends and foes alike. You were confident in yourself and you did what had to be done. You've lost that spark over the years. I say shape up and show people why you were once renowned as the professor and god of shinobi. Anko said, folding her arms across her chest. The third Hokage frowned at this, but nodded his head in agreement. True. I suppose I'd best start doing what's right, rather than what's easy. I'll try, Anko-chan. I just hope it isn't too late. The only time it would be too late is if you didn't act at all before you die. I'm sure you can put everyone in their place if you put your mind to it. Naruto said with a shrug of his shoulders. Anyways, we've got to go get some training in. Just think of all of this as food for thought. Not trying to show you any disrespect, old-timer. Just trying to help you become what you were meant to be. Hiruzen nodded and said, I understand, Naruto-kun. You four go on and enjoy yourselves. I'll think on what you've said and try to do what's right. Do take care of yourselves. With that, Team 11 made their way out of the Hokage's office and began making their way outside so they could return to training ground number 44 and resume training. 2 weeks later. Let me get this straight. That little punk Sasuke demanded that you give him a tougher mission because he couldn't handle a few days of D-rank missions. And when you went to reprimand him for his attitude, Anko began, only for Naruto to interrupt. That ass Kakashi insisted that his team was ready for a C rank, so you went and gave them one. But now it's gone to shit, they found out the client lied about the danger and the mission's gone up to at least a B rank with a high possibility of becoming an A rank mission. Are we hearing this right? Hiruzen sighed and rubbed at the bridge of his nose. I had hoped that by allowing them to go on this mission that Team 7, more specifically Sasuke and Sakura, would learn that they just aren't ready for this kind of mission yet. They need to understand the concept of teamwork, but they're failing in that regard. Ikumo-chan is the only one that shows any potential in that team, but she's going to stagnate if Kakashi doesn't focus on her training at all. You were right about Kakashi not being a suitable sensei for any team, Anko-chan. Anko scoffed at this. You're damn right I was right. Kakashi's a lazy asshole that doesn't deserve his rank, let alone the reputation he's received as a feared shinobi. Maybe if he'd take things more seriously, he'd be better, but I kinda doubt it. Now, will you explain why you called us here for this? I'm assuming we're meant to back up Team 7. I get that right. Hiruzen nodded and said, yes. They've gone to the land of waves to protect a bridge builder by the name of Tazuna while he builds his bridge. I want you to assist them in protecting Tazuna, but there's another mission I'd like you to undertake while you're there. Looking them in the eyes seriously, one by one, Hiruzen soon said, assassinate Gato and wipe out everyone in his employ. Free those he's taken prisoner and set things right in wave. Do you understand me? Team 11 nodded as one and said, of course, Hokage-sama. We'll do what needs to be done. Very good. Pack for a month and be on your way as soon as you can. That team is not ready for this kind of mission yet, so I'm placing you in charge, Anko-chan. If Kakashi has a problem with it, tell him to fuck off and give him this letter from me. This letter should set him straight. Thank you, Hokage-sama. Anko said with a smile on her face. Glad to see you're returning to your old self, little by little. Now team, go and get packed for a month, just as Hokage-sama said. We're going to hurry after them and assist them however we can while keeping our real mission a secret. Knowing that little shit-stained Sasuke and his wannabe girlfriend, they'll just get jealous and demand that we allow them to take care of Gato. Yes, sensei. They exclaimed before hurrying out of the Hokage's office to go and get their belongings. They only had one destination, as Caulifla and Kale had both moved in with Naruto the same day he had moved into his new home. Meanwhile, Anko looked at the Hokage and grinned. I'm glad you've got enough confidence in my team to handle something like this, Hokage-sama. Thanks. Guess we'll be seeing you when we see you next. Take care of yourself, old man. The third chuckled a bit and nodded his head. Take care of you and your team, Anko-chan. I'm looking forward to hearing good news from you upon your return. And if Kakashi and his team give you a hassle, I want you to tell me the full truth about them upon your return. Do you understand me? Of course, Hokage-sama. If that's all, I'll be on my way. Gotta get packed, after all. Yes, that will be all, Anko-chan. Be safe. Hiruzen said moments before Anko left his office. Once they were gone, Hiruzen sighed and rubbed at the bridge of his nose again. Now to deal with the council. A few days later. Team 11 could barely believe their eyes as they watched the scene play out before them. Kakashi had been captured quite easily by their newest enemy. Zabuza Mamachi. The genin of Team 7 were pretty much stuck handling things by themselves, and the two dimwits, Sasuke and Sakura, had charged the man's water clone, only to get knocked out quite easily. Horyakumo was stuck trying to defend the bridge builder by herself. From the profanity she was spewing, they could tell she was pissed off at her team for putting her in such a position to begin with. Unable to simply watch this anymore, Anko nodded at her genin and said, do it. With pleasure. Caulifla said before firing a Kai blast at the clone, taking it out of the picture in an instant. When Zabuza looked her way, the Saiyan grinned and flew at him, throwing a series of Kai blasts at him, forcing him to defend with his blade or risk being harmed. When the attacks just kept coming, he released his hold on the water sphere and quickly leapt out of the way of Caulifla's attacks. Come on, that all you got, you freak? Naruto sighed and shook his head. She never changes, does she? Have to admit, I like that about her. She's awesome just the way she is. Hale giggled a bit and nodded her head in agreement. I wouldn't change sis for anything. I'm happy just being near her. But, are you sure we shouldn't go down there and help her? Anko shook her head. Nah, she's got this. I'm sure the two of you could easily handle this as well if you wanted to. For now, let's check on the idiots and see if they're alright. As you wish. Though if Sasuke wakes up and starts bitching at me, I'm going to knock his ass right out again. Naruto said with a shrug of his shoulders. Hale and Anko both giggled a bit at that before they went about checking on Sakura and Kakashi respectively. So, how do you feel, knowing that you got your ass handed to you by someone that should have been easy pickings for you? Anko questioned Kakashi with a nasty smirk on her face. Kakashi groaned and shook his head in disbelief as he returned his headband to its usual place. Yeah. Laugh it up, Anko. I assume you're the backup that Hokage-sama chose to send. You know it. And to top it off, he's placed me in charge of this mission. You fucked up, Kakashi. Now it's time for me to take over and get things done the right way. The silver-haired Jonin frowned at this and looked hard into her eyes. This is my team's mission, Anko. Where's the proof that he's placed you in charge? Reaching into her pouch, she withdrew the letter she had been given by the Hokage and presented it to him like she was presenting a nobleman or king or something they coveted greatly. Here, O Grand Master of Idiocy. Kakashi scowled as he snatched the letter from her hands and began to read through it. As he did, his eye widened and he scowled deeper. So, he's really entrusting all of this to you and your team, is he? Fine then, we'll follow your orders. For now, at least. He thought, stewing just a bit over the fact that control had been stripped from him. Meanwhile, Sasuke had come around only to see Naruto looking down at him. Ugh. Why are you here, Dumbus? Naruto sighed and shook his head in disbelief. Is that how you should greet someone for coming to your aid? You idiots should have returned to the village immediately upon finding out that the client lied about the danger of the mission. Should have left the old man to fend for himself. But no, you wanted to get stronger by fighting strong opponents, right? Typical for a power-hungry Dumbus like you, Sasuke. What the hell does it matter to you? You didn't have your whole family killed in front of you. You didn't even have a family to begin with. You could never understand my pain. Naruto reached up and rubbed the bridge of his nose in agitation for a time. Then, after a moment, he punched Sasuke as hard as he could in the face, knocking him out cold and breaking his nose in the process. Much better. Now I don't have to listen to his bullcrap until later. Sadly, Sakura saw this and tried to rush to her precious Sasuke-kun, only for Kale to hold her down. Stop, Sakura. You need to rest a bit. You took a pretty nasty blow to the head back there. Screw you. Sasuke-kun needs me. The pink-haired girl screamed angrily. Now get off of me, you tramp. Caulifla turned from her defeated opponent to glare harshly at Sakura. Nobody calls my sis a tramp. I'm going to stomp your head until it's fucking paste on the ground. She exclaimed before flying at Sakura, prepared to do just that. However, the moment she got close, Kakashi appeared in front of her and pinned the Saiyan warrior to the ground. No, you don't. I won't let you harm a fellow citizen of Konohagakure. Kakashi said seriously as he continued to pin Caulifla to the ground. The Saiyan woman snarled and thrashed against him, trying to force him off, but his grip on her was tight and she was struggling just to move. Let me go, you rotten, one-eyed bastard. Before Kakashi could say anything, Anko walked up and punched him hard in the face, knocking him off of her student. Fuck you, Kakashi. You have no right to discipline my genin. That little bitch on your team should be your focus. Both her and the Uchiha aren't. They need to learn their place and understand the pecking order in this world. If you can't rein them in and fix their attitudes, I'm going to inform Hokage-sama that you're just not fit to lead a team of genin. I'll also inform him about those little shits and explain how your dysfunctional team doesn't deserve to be called genin. The only one that truly means anything on your team is Ikumo Kurama. Not you, not the Uchiha, and especially not Little Miss Fangirl. The cycloptic Jonin rose to his feet and glared at Anko. Hokage-sama may have put you in charge, but I won't have you telling me how to deal with my team. Before you point out the flaws of my team, you should take a good long look at yours. Naruto's a moron that can't add 2 and 2 together to make 4. That girl's a loose cannon. And that one over there? She's clearly the weak link on your team and liable to get everyone killed. Team 11 each scowled at Kakashi, even Kale. However, they didn't say a word, choosing instead to take Tazuna and walk off with him towards his home, leaving Team 7 to their own devices. I swear to Kami right now that if Team 7 keeps up with their shit, I'm breaking them. Caulifla said seriously. I won't tolerate their crap. Anko sighed and nodded her head. Neither will I. Kakashi's proven to be worse than I could have ever imagined, and his genin aren't any better. No offense to you, of course, Yakumo. She said, smiling at the only member of Team 7 to actually follow after them. Anyways, did you finish Zabuza off, Caulifla-chan? Caulifla shook her head negatively. Nope. Some person claiming to be a hunter nin showed up and took him away before I could kill the punk. If you ask me, I'd say they're working together. Probably. What kind of weapon did this hunter nin use to deal the finishing blow on Mr. Monobrow? Anko questioned. These thin pointy things that look like needles. That ring any bells? Anko sighed and said, Senbon. Yeah, the hunter nin is definitely working with Zabuza if he or she is using those. Guess we'd better prepare ourselves for a confrontation with them somewhere down the line. Naruto grinned and pounded his fists together. I'm looking forward to it. How about you, Caulifla-chan? Grinning at her friend, the feisty woman pumped her fist into the air and shouted out, oh hell yeah. I'm gonna kick their asses so hard they won't be able to sit for a week. Anko chuckled at this and said, glad to hear it. Now Tazuna, you and I have a lot we need to discuss. Not the least of which is why exactly you lied to us about the danger level of this mission. You owe us some serious dough for endangering our people the way you have. Tazuna gulped but nodded his head quickly and understanding. Oh of course. I'm so sorry. Meh, it's fine. You just ended up with a shitty team protecting you. Again, no offense intended to you, Yakumo-chan. We've just got a problem with your teammates, your sensei included. Anko said, sounding genuinely apologetic to the young Kurama heiress. Yakumo sighed but nodded her head in agreement. Understandable. Trying to deal with those three is a horrible pain in the butt. Kakashi doesn't even deserve to be called a sensei, as he's focused all of his attention on Sasuke while neglecting Sakura and me. Then again, Sakura doesn't want to train at all anyways. Me though? I'd love to be learning more, but so far I've been left to my own devices. I really wish I had been placed on a different team. Anko frowned at hearing this and was quiet for a while as she thought over Yakumo's situation. Alright. If you're that eager to train, we'll help you out. We're going to have to see what you can do first, though. Okay. The Kurama heiress grinned and nodded her head emphatically. I'm looking forward to it, Anko-san. Anko chuckled again and said, just call me Anko. I hope we can get along well during our time together here. Meanwhile, Naruto and his fellow Saiyans were conversing with one another about their situation. Kale, don't let what Kakashi said get to you. We know you're not some weak link. You're just as tough as anyone here. And Naruto. We know you're not some idiot. You've proven that time and again. If that asshole badmouths us again, I'm shoving my fist down his throat. Naruto chuckled and said, sounds like a good idea to me. He's an asshole, just like the jackass, Sasuke. And Caulifla-chan is right, Kale-chan. You're awesome just the way you are. I wouldn't change who you are for the world. Kale blushed a bit and said, thank you. And don't worry, I wasn't letting what he said get to me. When I'm with the two of you, I feel so much more confident in myself and I feel like I can really do anything. That's the spirit, Kale. Now, it looks like we're at the client's home, so let's chill for a bit and then we can get to training. Right, sensei? Anko chuckled a bit and nodded her head. Of course. Looking back over her shoulder, she saw that Sasuke was practically dragging an exhausted Kakashi behind him, while Sakura swooned over her darling Sasuke-kun, as per the usual. At least they caught up finally. She said with a shrug. Naruto ignored Sasuke's glare and simply entered the client's home. Taking a seat on the couch nearby with Caulifla and Kale joining him, he looked around the room with a smile. Nice place you got here, Tazuna. I like it. Thank you, Naruto. He said sincerely. When his lovely daughter entered the room, he grinned and motioned towards the shinobi that were there to protect him. Tsunami-chan, I want you to meet the super ninjas that are here to protect us. Tsunami looked to every one of the ninja that had come to protect her father and smiled at them. Bowing slightly, she said, thank you very much for protecting my father. I know he can be a handful, but I do hope he hasn't caused you any trouble. Kakashi offered an eye smile and said, no trouble at all. Anko scowled at Kakashi before turning to Tsunami. Yes, he has been a problem. Your dear father lied about the danger this mission presented and put our people in great danger. If it was up to me, I'd have left Azuna to fend for himself and called off the mission. But we're here and we're going to put a stop to Geto and his machinations. Then, when your country is saved, Tazuna is going to have to pay the full price of this mission with whatever money your people can scrounge up. Maybe next time you'll put your father in his place and he'll learn not to fuck with us again. Tsunami frowned at her father and shook her head in disappointment. I see. Then I'm truly sorry for my father's unruly behavior. Still, you have my thanks for looking after him. I sincerely hope you can save the land of waves. Of course we can. It's our job, after all. Anko said with a smirk. You've got nothing to worry about, I promise. Thank you. Tsunami said. Now, you must be starving. Let me cook something up for all of you. And please, if my son begins to hassle you for any reason at all, don't mind him. He's been through a lot and he's been changed because of it. No promises. If he says something that gets under our skin, we'll make it known loud and clear not to screw with us. So you'd better do your best to keep him under control while we're here. Anko said with a frown on her face. Dealing with an unruly, annoying little shit on top of having to put up with Team 7's bullshit was just too much to deal with. I see. I'll do my best to make sure he doesn't bother you then. Good. Anko said simply before she and her team relaxed, waiting for dinner to be served. A couple days later. Naruto scowled as he practiced firing Kai blasts at the surrounding trees, blowing them to pieces as he did so. That rotten little bitch, Inari, had said something that really set him off and he had blown up at the little punk. How dare that little punk claim I don't know what it's like to suffer. He's lucky I didn't pound his skull in for that comment. Before he could destroy any more trees, he felt a hand on his shoulder. Looking over his shoulder, he spotted Kale standing there looking at him with a worried frown on her face. And Naruto-kun. Are you going to be okay? Naruto sighed heavily and shook his head. I don't know, Kale-chan. What that little brat said really got to me. I'm so angry and I just don't know what to do with this feeling. Kale gently wrapped her arms around Naruto and hugged him close. It'll be okay and Naruto-kun. I'm here for you and so is Caulifla. You're our friend and we understand why you're in so much pain. It'll get better with time, I'm positive. But for now, let's just sit together and talk about whatever comes to mind. It might help. The violet-eyed Saiyan smiled softly at her and nodded slowly. Alright, Kale-chan. As you wish. He said before sitting down against a tree. When Kale sat down next to him, he reached down and took her hand in his as he so often did with her. As the two of them lost themselves in conversation, they didn't notice Caulifla watching them from the shadows. They really are cute together. I wonder if Kale's falling for him. I guess it wouldn't be so bad, but he'd better not hurt her. 1 week later. Team 11 was not happy with Team 7's bullshit. Because of them, they'd had a rough time trying to not just protect Azuna, but also training and hunting for Geto and his goons. Sure, they had eventually found Geto's base of operations and dealt with him and his lackeys, killing each of them without remorse, especially after what they discovered. They had kidnapped a number of women and had begun trying to train them as sex slaves. It was disgusting and they were more than happy to kill the bastards responsible for their terrible predicament. However, word had apparently not reached Zabuza and his minion that Geto and his people were dead. Because of this, Zabuza and his apprentice, or whatever the hell she was they didn't know, had appeared on the incomplete bridge, both of them prepared to fight to the death. Seeing as Tazuna's family was safe, especially with Yakumo guarding them just in case, Anko and the other members of Team 11 prepared to combat their foes. However, before they could jump into the fight, Sasuke charged Zabuza's apprentice, screaming about how he was going to kill the androgynous person. When they began to fight, Sasuke was soon encased in a dome of ice mirrors with Zabuza's apprentice nailing the last Uchiha with a number of senbon, causing him to scream out in a mixture of pain and frustration. Meanwhile, against orders, Kakashi began a deadly duel with Zabuza, the two of them fighting on mostly equal footing, despite the abundance of mist clouding the area around them. TCH. Should have known they'd pull this shit. Hokage-sama's going to hear about this. Anko said angrily. Kale would have said something, but she suddenly found herself in the dome of ice mirrors with several senbon piercing her all over her body. Coughing up a bit of blood, she soon collapsed to her knees and tried to pry some of the senbon from her body, but she found that she was having great difficulty even moving her arms. As she began to lose consciousness, she fell to the side, her eyes closing as she struggled just to breathe. Seeing this, Caulifla and Naruto felt an immeasurable amount of anger surging through them. Glaring from the ice user to Sasuke, who was smirking at what he had accomplished, they both began to scream out in rage as their power began to build up. You son of a bitch. Kale erg. Caulifla screamed as her power reached a boiling point. As Caulifla began to undergo a change, Naruto found himself feeling an immense power building up inside of him as his anger fueled him. I'll kill you, Sasuke Uchiha. How dare you do that to Kale-chan? He screamed furiously. Sasuke looked on in fear as he felt their power rising higher and higher. When their hair turned golden and their eyes took on a blue shade, he began to back away slowly, trying not to suffocate from the intense feeling he felt from the two of them. What are they? Am I really going to die here? Yes, it wasn't good to be Sasuke at this moment. When they glanced back towards Kale, they were relieved when they saw the ice user trying to help her. Turning back to Sasuke, they snarled at him and said as one, "Die, Sasuke Uchiha." Chapter 3 A Saiyan's Wrath. Haku frowned as she looked over the wounded teenager in front of her. As soon as her opponent had deployed such a cowardly tactic to escape her attack, Haku deactivated her technique, letting the mirrors of ice shatter and fall to the ground around her. Now, here she was, looking over Kale, as she had heard her teammates call her. After a brief while of slowly removing her senbon, she smiled when Kale took in a gasp of air and slowly began to sit upright. Keeping her down, Haku said, "Wait. Don't try to move just yet. Let me remove the senbon. I can't believe your ally would use you as a shield to protect himself. Is that a common practice among Konoha shinobi?" Kale slowly shook her head. "And no. Sasuke's well, he's a jerk. I'm not surprised he'd do this to me." "I see." Haku said as she removed the last of the senbon. Helping Kale sit up, she looked towards her teammates, seeing that their appearances had changed. "Any idea what's going on with those two?" The Saiyan shook her head. "No. I have no idea. It feels like they've reached some kind of new power level, but I've never even heard of something like this before." "Well, whatever it is, it looks like they're getting ready to kill Sasuke. Should we stop them?" Haku questioned unsurely. The kind-hearted Saiyan shook her head. "No. If we get in their way now, who knows what would happen? They might target you as well as Sasuke." Haku frowned at this, but nodded her head in understanding. "Of course. I just hope they don't get in trouble if they do kill him. I think Hokage-sama would understand," Kale said, though she sounded a little unsure. "Though the problem is with the council. They're a bit of a pain, from what Naruto-kun's told us." "I see." Haku said before the two of them went quiet. Meanwhile, as Kakashi and Zabuza felt the power radiating off of the two enraged Saiyans, they stopped their duel and looked back to see what was going on. When Kakashi saw the Saiyan's focus was on his favorite student, he prepared to intercept them. "And where do you think you're going, Kakashi? You aren't running away from our duel, are you?" The Sharingan wielder glared at Zabuza and said, "I'm going to save my student from a couple of traitors. If you try to stop me, I'll cut you down where you stand." Zabuza quirked a brow at this and asked, "Traitors? You're calling them traitors?" That little runt of an Uchiha used a fellow Konoha shinobi to take Haku's attack for him. If anyone's a traitor, it's that little bitch. But let me guess, you like sucking his and stroking his ego, don't you? You have absolutely no intention of discipling that little shit for what he's done, do you? TCH. You're more pathetic than I thought. I think I'd be doing the world a favor by getting rid of you, Kakashi." Glancing over his shoulder at Sasuke and the pissed-off Saiyans, Kakashi snarled and used a replacement technique to swap places with Sakura, leaving her at Zabuza's mercy. Quickly moving in front of Sasuke, he held a pair of kunai in a backhand grip and glared at the two Super Saiyans. "Stop right there. I can't let you kill Sasuke-kun." Naruto snarled at this and vanished in a blur of speed faster than Kakashi could react to. Yes, he was able to see the path Naruto was taking thanks to his Sharingan, but just seeing an attack coming and actually dodging it were two entirely different things. When Naruto slammed his fist into the side of Kakashi's head and sent him flying into the side of the bridge, Kakashi winced in agony. "Ah fucking hell." Caulifla, now that the path was clear, raised her hand, palm out, and began charging up a large Kai blast. "Oh Sasuke, die for me, will you?" she asked sweetly before firing her blast at the frightened Ichigo. Kakashi tried to move to protect his student, but Naruto appeared in front of him and fired a powerful Kai blast into the Jonin's gut, sending him crashing through the railing and down into the ground below. "Sorry Cyclops, but I'm afraid I can't have you getting in the way." Sasuke harmed Kale-chan. "She is very dear to me and I refuse to let her assailant go unpunished." Unfortunately for Caulifla, Sakura had managed to rush over and push her precious Asukan out of the way, taking the Saiyan's Kai blast full on. When the Pincat went flying and tumbling on the ground for quite the distance, Caulifla snarled. "Stupid bitch. She'll be lucky if she's still alive after that." Glaring at Sasuke, Caulifla found herself grinning and said, "Still, maybe death is too merciful for you. So, how about I just end your career as a shinobi, Staring with removing those precious eyes of yours." Sasuke's eyes went wide and he quickly turned to run away, only to come face to face with Naruto. "Where do you think you're going, asshole? Do you really think you can escape two pissed off Saiyan warriors?" Sasuke's initial thought was, what the fuck is a Saiyan? However, he didn't have time to dwell on that when he felt something sharp on his cheek. Following the blade to the hand holding it and then following the arm up to the face, he felt the cold chill of death creeping down his spine. Caulifla was holding a kunai against his cheek, smiling cruelly all the while. Please." Naruto scoffed. "Please. Now you're begging us not to hurt you? Pathetic, Sasuke," he said before he drew a kunai and nodded to Caulifla. "Caulifla-chan, hold him still, would you?" When she nodded and pinned Sasuke in place, holding his head tight, Naruto thanked her before he slowly began to cut out Sasuke's eyes. Everyone on the bridge listened as Sasuke screamed and screamed. They could easily see tears of blood trickling down his cheeks. A moment later, after carving out Sasuke's eyes, Naruto tossed them up and down in his hand before crushing them and tossing what remained of them over the side of the bridge, letting the remains fall into the water below. "There we go. That gets rid of your precious Sharingan eyes. Now, should we cripple you? And that's a hard decision to make. Caulifla-chan, should we break his spine and paralyze him from the waist down? What do you think?" Before Caulifla could reply, Kale and Haku walked up to them. "Please, that's enough, Caulifla-chan, Naruto-kun. I don't want to see you become monsters like he and his team are. Minus Ikumo-chan, of course." Kale pleaded. Looking at Kale, Naruto and Caulifla went wide-eyed for a moment before hugging her tight. "Thank Kami you're okay," Naruto exclaimed. "We were so worried about you. Are you alright, Kale?" Caulifla asked, looking her sister figure over for any damage, aside from what she could initially see. Haku removed her mask and smiled at them. "She'll be just fine. I still can't believe that jerk swapped places with her like that. Trust me, it's not really a surprise. Sasuke really is that much of a," Naruto said with a sigh. After a moment, he looked himself over and then looked at Caulifla, noticing almost for the first time just how different her appearance was and how he felt. "What I really want to know is what the heck happened to us. I felt so furious and then I was like this." Caulifla nodded in agreement as she looked Naruto over. "Have to admit, the new look suits you, Naruto," she said, grinning at him. "Anyways, same thing happened with me. I felt this uncontrollable rage overtake me and then not quite sure how to phrase it. I feel strong. Kinda like I could take on a damn army or something. Same here. It feels amazing. At the same time though, it feels like there's a constant drain on my energy. It's not much, but still," Naruto said before willing himself out of this form. As Naruto returned to normal, Caulifla frowned for a moment before she looked at her hands. Clenching them into fists, she shot a glare at Sasuke and said, "I feel it too. It's not bothering me, but it's still there. But right now, I'm more concerned with Mr. Asshole over there. I still want to kill the punk for what he did to Kale." Kale frowned and hugged Caulifla. "Let it go, sister. He's not worth sullying your hands over. Besides, Naruto-kun told us before that Sasuke is beloved by the village. It's bad enough that his eyes have been removed. It'll just paint a target on your backs. Then there's her," Kale said, looking at Sakura. "I think she's dead. That's not going to sit well with those in charge. The same could be said about her parents." Caulifla scoffed at this, but powered down anyways. Looking at Sakura's unmoving body, she sighed and walked over to the downed girl. Kneeling down, she felt for a pulse and frowned when there wasn't one. "Yeah, this bitch is dead. She shouldn't have given her life for an asshole like that, though. Pity." It was at this moment that Kakashi walked up and saw the state of his two genin. "Damn you both. I swear you'll pay for what you've done." Anko chose this moment to walk up and deck Kakashi, knocking him to the ground. "No, they won't. Hokage-sama will hear about what you three did and when he does, you'd best be prepared for when he tears into your ass. You're in deep shit, Kakashi, and you'll be lucky if you get to keep what remains of your team." And I've already told you before, I'll be the one to discipline my team if need be. And right now, I don't see a need to. After all, you disobeyed orders, both of you did. Then Sasuke used Kale-chan to take a hit for him. That's the kind of behavior I'd expect from a coward like him. If he was allowed to, he would have used those eyes of his against the village, given enough time. I'd say he got his just desserts. Sakura is an unfortunate casualty, but she chose to give her life to save a scumbag like Sasuke. Then there's you, Kakashi. Not only did you disobey orders, but you attempted to attack my genin as well. You even replaced yourself with Sakura in your attempt to get to Sasuke in time to save him. You're damn lucky Zabuza didn't just kill her to prove a point to you. And again, you don't seem to give a shit about anyone on your team besides Sasuke. For your traitorous actions here, I have every right to kill you. But I'm not going to. I'd rather see what Hokage-sama does to you. Kakashi scowled at her and said, "You're the traitor here, Anko. You allowed your genin to disable Sasuke-kun and murder Sakura in cold blood. You know how important Sasuke-kun is to the village. Besides that, how is he supposed to continue with his career if he's unable to see? On top of that, his usefulness to the village depended on him awakening the Sharingan. Now he's pretty much useless. Best we can hope for now is that he can pass the Sharingan on to his children and raise them right." Anko sighed and shook her head in disappointment. "You act as if Sasuke is some all-important figure in Konoha. When in truth, he's actually nothing special. They were using him to further their own goals. Besides that, Sasuke was a flight risk and would have gladly abandoned the village if it meant he could gain power enough to kill his brother. This should hopefully teach Sasuke a valuable lesson. But I highly doubt he'll learn it." Before Kakashi could offer a word of protest, Zabuza walked up with Haku at his side. "I'm disappointed in you, Kakashi of the Sharingan. Even as wicked as I am, I would never have stooped so low. I expected better of a shinobi of your caliber. When I saw you replace yourself with that girl, I took pity on her instead of cutting her down like I suppose you expected of me. Because of her sacrifice, your precious Uchiha is still alive. If he's any good, he'll learn to make do without those Sharingan eyes of his. Just because someone is blind doesn't mean they can't be a good shinobi." Anko turned from Kakashi to face Zabuza with a frown on her face. "I assume this means you're not interested in fighting us anymore." Zabuza shook his head before pointing at Kale. "Well, you were busy torturing that snot-nosed brat. This one told Haku about Gato's death and she proceeded to tell me. If I'm not getting paid, then there's no point in fighting. Besides that, I'm sick of all of it. I'm tired of fighting and killing and working for scumbags like Gato. I'm trying to decide on something, but I need to ask you a few questions. First off, is everyone in your village like those pricks?" he questioned, motioning towards Kakashi and Sasuke. Anko scoffed and shook her head. "There's plenty of idiots, sure, but you'll find idiots like that everywhere. The majority of shinobi in our village though are alright. Hokage-sama's okay too. He was kinda iffy, I guess, for a while, but he seems to be getting some of his spark back, little by little. But yeah, not everyone is like these idiots." "Good to know." Second question. Would the Hokage accept the two of us into the village? Like I said, I'm tired of this life. It's no way to live, especially not for Haku. I know she looks up to me and loves me regardless of what I choose to do, but I can't help but worry for her. So, would we be welcome there? Kakashi scoffed and said, "As if I'd let you anywhere near Konoha." Anko kicked Kakashi in the nuts, listening as he screamed from the pain. Afterwards, she returned her attention to Zabuza with a pleasant smile on her face. "Ignoring the idiot, if you were willing to join our village, I'm sure Hokage-sama would love to have you. It'd be great if you wanted to join the Shinobi Corps. But I'd understand if you declined to do so. I'm sure the life of a missing nin can't have been easy." Zabuza looked at Kakashi for a moment before looking at Anko. Sweat dropping at what he had just witnessed, he decided to just roll with it. "Okay, so that's a thing. Anyways, I'm really just looking for a place to set down roots, sort of. So long as Haku is well taken care of, then I'm fine. She's like a daughter to me and I want to see her happy. So I'll go to Konoha with you and see if it's the kind of place I'd like Haku to live in. If I don't like what I see, then I'll just leave. Simple as that." Caulifla folded her arms across her chest and narrowed her eyes at the man. Pointing her thumb at Haku, she said, "So long as she doesn't try to hurt Kale again, I'm good." Haku frowned and said, "I wasn't aiming to hurt her. I wasn't even aiming to kill that jerk. I'd never have hurt Kale if not for that cowardly tactic Sasuke deployed." Caulifla sighed and looked at Haku with a deadpan stare. "I was kidding. Did you really think I was serious?" Kale patted Haku on the shoulder and offered her a tiny smile. "Sorry, Haku-san. Caulifla was only teasing you. I promise." Haku looked a bit uncertain, but soon sighed and shook her head. "It's okay. I'm grateful that you don't blame me for what happened to Kale. I appreciate it." "Meh, nothing to get all worked up about. Caulifla said as she looked from them to Sasuke. Him though? I still feel like killing the little punk, but whatever. What do you say we help Tazuna finish up this bridge so we can go back home, huh? Sounds like a good plan to me. Naruto said. Turning to Tazuna, he asked, since your helpers are gone, what do you say to allowing us to work on the bridge for you? If it helps, I can create a small army of shadow clones to assist us and make things go faster. Tazuna looked between them for a moment before turning his gaze to a few parts of his bridge that he'd have to repair before they could continue with the building process. Just so long as you help me fix this mess that you people created, I'll take whatever help I can get from you. Looking towards the spot where he had blasted Kakashi, Naruto chuckled a little nervously. Yeah, sorry about that. Oh well. He said before bringing his hands up into a single hand seal and summoning forth about 20 shadow clones. Alright, give us our orders Tazuna and we'll do what we can for you. Thanks kid. Alright folks, here's what I need you to do. 3 weeks later. Team 11 and Yakumo had discussed Sakura's death a day after the events on the bridge. When they did, Naruto had admitted that even though he didn't like her, he didn't hate her to the point that he wished her dead. The death of a classmate just didn't feel right to him, though he still wished he could have just killed Sasuke instead of disabling him. The other Saiyans didn't really know Sakura well enough to judge her, but Caulifla had to admit that anyone willing to jump in front of one of her Kai blasts was worthy of her respect. That, and she did it to save someone dear to her, which was impressive in and of itself. Kale, on the other hand, felt bad for Sakura, but she didn't really have any opinions about it outside of that. Kakashi and Sasuke had chosen to seclude themselves, refusing to go near Team 11 if they could help it. Kakashi had tried to help Sasuke however he could, but Sasuke was still so furious at what had happened to him that he shut down Kakashi every time he tried to help. Anko had kept up her promise to train Yakumo whenever she could make the time to do so. The Kurama heiress had asked if Anko could see about adding her to Team 11, but Anko had admitted that she didn't know if that would be possible, or even if she could keep up with the trio of Saiyans. However, Yakumo was insistent and soon convinced Anko to at least try. Now, however, they were back in Konoha, and the villagers that saw the state Sasuke was in were horrified. Aside from that, they also took notice of the lack of a certain member of Team 7. When they began looking at Naruto with accusing stares, he scoffed and flipped them off as he walked with his teammates and friends to the Hokage Tower. Kakashi was left to guide Sasuke after them, as Sasuke refused to allow Kakashi to simply carry him everywhere. As they walked, Zabuza and Haku couldn't help but notice the glares directed at Naruto. Geez kid, the fuck did you do to these people to make them hate you so much? Naruto glanced at Zabuza for a moment before looking forward again. Not a damn thing, Zabuza. They've hated me from the moment I was born. And trust me, I'm not kidding about that. Zabuza's eyes widened for a moment before he nodded in understanding. I see. Only a few reasons I can think of for why that'd be. Either you're a Jinchuriki or something else is at play here. He said, eyeing Naruto curiously. So which is it? Naruto chuckled dryly and said, I'm a Jinchuriki. The Kyuubi Jinchuriki, to be exact. That should tell you everything you need to know. The swordsman winced in sympathy. Damn kid. You have my sympathies. Meh, I'm used to it by now. Now I just don't give a crap. And I'm strong enough to crush anyone that tries any kind of shit against me, so they have a real reason to fear pissing me off now. Naruto said with a shrug of his shoulders. Enough. We're here. Anko said as they entered the Hokage Tower and ascended the stairs, heading for the Hokage's office. Ignoring the secretary, they entered the Hokage's office and approached him. Hokage-sama, Teams 11 and 7 reporting in. Well, one member of Team 7 at least. Kakashi and Sasuke will be here soon. Hiruzen frowned as he looked between the members of Team 11 and Yakumo before his eyes finally settled on Zabuza and his apprentice. It seems you've got quite a lot you need to tell me. Not the least of which is what happened to Sakura. Anko sighed and rubbed the back of her head. Yeah. To put it bluntly Hokage-sama, things went to shit. When we caught up to them, Kakashi was pinned down by Zabuza here and Sakura and Sasuke weren't faring too well either. Caulifla took care of Zabuza, but Kakashi was not happy about me taking charge of the mission and insulted each of my genin, treating them as if they were trash. Pissed me the hell off. Anyways, as per your orders, we hunted down Gato and ended him and his men. Kakashi, Sasuke and Sakura were real pains in the ass the entire time though. Trying to interfere with us and our mission and generally just making life difficult. Sadly, it seems Zabuza and Haku hadn't learned about Gato's demise, so they showed up later when we went to the bridge. I had ordered Kakashi and his team to hang back so I could talk to Zabuza if and when he appeared again. Unfortunately. It was at this moment that Kakashi walked in with Sasuke and shot a glare at Anko. Your orders were bullshit and you know it. Zabuza was an enemy and so was Haku. Looking at the Hokage, he pointed toward Sasuke's empty eye sockets and said, Hokage-sama, Naruto and Caulifla killed Sakura and removed Sasuke's Sharingan. They have to be punished for what they've done. Enko sighed and palmed her face. Ugh. Hokage-sama, if you'll allow me to explain the situation. Sasuke snarled and asked, what's there to explain? You were right there and you let them take out my eyes. And if that worthless bitch hadn't jumped in the way, I'd be dead now, no thanks to you. Naruto snarled and punched Sasuke hard in the face, knocking him to the ground and breaking his nose in the process. That stupid bitch as you call her loved you. She practically worshipped the ground you walked on. But more than that, she was your teammate and she sacrificed herself to save you. And this is how you thank her, fuck you, Sasuke. Enough. Hiruzen exclaimed, getting everyone's attention. Anko, finish your report. I want to know the truth about what happened in the Land of Waves. Of course, Hokage-sama. As I said before, Kakashi and Sasuke disobeyed my orders and proceeded to attack Zabuza and his accomplice, Haku. Sasuke was losing his battle against Haku, and when it looked as if he was about to die, he replaced himself with Kale-chan, leaving her to take the blows that were meant for him. Hiruzen narrowed his eyes as he looked at Kakashi and Sasuke. I see. Continue, Anko. Yes sir. As expected, Naruto-kun and Caulifla-chan became enraged by what Sasuke had just done to their dear friend. Their rage led to them unlocking some new form, attaining more power than they had before. They proceeded to advance on Sasuke, ready to kill him. Kakashi shooting an angry glare at her fellow Jonin sensei, she didn't look away as she said, replaced himself with Sakura so he could get to Sasuke before they could kill him. He was willing to sacrifice Sakura to save Sasuke. There's more you haven't told me yet, Anko. I'll deal with them later. Right now I want to know what happened. So please continue. Hiruzen said as he pinned Kakashi with a glare and a focused burst of his potent killing intent. Naruto-kun moved faster than Kakashi could react and knocked Kakashi away. When he prepared to attack my genin again, Naruto-kun struck him again, sending him flying. Meanwhile, Caulifla-chan fired one of her energy attacks at Sasuke. Her attack would have killed him, but Sakura, in a noble act of sacrifice, took the blow that was meant for him. She died as a result of this. I have her body sealed inside of this scroll. Anko explained before holding up a scroll. Anyways, the two of them decided that death was too good for Sasuke and proceeded to tear out his eyes and destroyed them. The two of them likely would have done more, but Kale walked up to them and asked them to stop. Kakashi approached my team and tried to tear into them for what they had done, but I told him again that if anyone was going to reprimand my team for what they did, it would be me. At the time, I didn't see any reason to do so. I still don't. Anyways, Zabuza and Haku approached us at that point and we talked for a while before he made the decision to come to Konoha with us so he could see if he would like to settle down here. Hiruzen nodded in understanding before locking eyes with Zabuza. I see. Thank you Anko. Zabuza, allow me to officially welcome you to the village of Konohagakure. If you decide that you would like to settle here, I have a favor to ask of you. I'll discuss that with you later however. Right now, I need to figure out what to do with these two. He said, turning his gaze on Kakashi and Sasuke. Kakashi, as of this moment, you are removed as sensei of Team 7. You will never be allowed to take on another genin team. I trusted you to do right by your team and you failed me. You've also proven yourself to be incapable of following simple orders given by a superior. I placed Anko in charge of the mission and entrusted her with a secondary task. Eliminating Gato and his men. From what I understand, you and your team interfered in their mission and could have cost the lives of every genin there. As of this moment, you are demoted to the rank of Chunin without ever being given the chance to be promoted back to Jonin. You're lucky I don't demote you to the rank of genin for what you've done. Turning his gaze onto Sasuke, Hiruzen scowled. As for you, Sasuke Uchiha, your fate will be decided by myself and the council. You intentionally tried to sacrifice a fellow Konoha shinobi and you will suffer the price of such an action. Anbu, lock him in a cell until it's time to deal with a little prick. As for you, Kakashi, I expect you to report for your new assignment of watching the gate all day, every day. You'll be doing that for at least a month before I determine if you're capable of doing anything more. Now shoo, just your presence is disturbing me. Sasuke scowled and shouted, you senile old bastard. I did nothing to deserve this kind of treatment. The Hokage glared fiercely at the blind Uchiha before waving his hand dismissively as one of his Anbu took Sasuke away. Turning his glare on Kakashi, he said sarcastically, I see you were working hard on his arrogant attitude. Well done. Kakashi frowned at this, but didn't say a word. Instead he turned and left the Hokage's office. Once he was gone, Hiruzen reached up and massaged the bridge of his nose. Yakumo-chan, I'm sorry. It looks like I'll have to put you in the reserves until a new team can be found for you. Anko looked at him and rubbed the back of her head a little nervously. Actually Hokage-sama, Yakumo-chan was hoping she could be placed on my team. What do you say? The third looked at Yakumo for a moment and frowned in thought. I'm taking some time to think on it, he asked, do you think you can keep up with those three? I warn you now that they are not your average person. It will be hard to keep up with them, I assure you. Yakumo looked into the Hokage's eyes, full of determination. Hokage-sama, I am quite positive that I can be a huge benefit to Team 11. I know that they're different, and though I don't quite know the full truth about them, I'm positive that I'll be fine with them. I'll train harder than ever if it means I can be with my friends. Hiruzen steepled his fingers together and closed his eyes, delving into his thoughts. After a while, he opened his eyes again and looked at Yakumo with a piercing stare. If I place you on Team 11, the team will be doing nothing but D-rank missions for a month. During that time, I expect you to acclimate into the team and become a true member of the team. I'll be watching to make sure you can mesh well with the team. If I determine that you're just not capable of keeping up with them, I'll be placing you in the reserves as I originally planned. Is that understood? Yakumo nodded and exclaimed, yes sir. I won't let you down, Hokage-sama. See that you don't. Turning his attention to Zabuza, he said, seeing as you're new here and don't yet trust the people, I'll allow you to live with Naruto-kun in his home for the time being. After all, you at least trust him and his friends, so it seems like the best option. I'm trusting you not to betray my trust, do you understand me? Should I determine you are a threat, I'll show you why I was called the god of shinobi. Sweating just a bit at the threat, Zabuza nodded in understanding. Of course, Hokage-sama. I'll behave, you have my word on that. Besides, I'd never put Haku at risk like that. Good. Now, I need to call the council together. I want you all to be there with me when I discuss what's happened with them. I warn you now, do not rise to their bait. They will likely say some harsh things to the lot of you once they learn what's happened, but I expect you to remain calm and not react. Do you understand me? Hiruzen said before motioning his Anbu to go and summon the council together. Yes, Hokage-sama. The Konoha shinobi exclaimed as one. I promise that we'll behave ourselves. Anko said. Good. Follow me. The Hokage said as he rose from his comfy chair and began to lead them out of his office and to the council chambers. Upon arriving, Hiruzen took his seat and motioned for Team 11 and company to get comfortable. Afterwards, he summoned another Anbu and ordered him to bring Sasuke before them. After a short while, the various members of the council began trickling in. Once they had all arrived and taken their seats, Hiruzen waited for a moment longer. It didn't take long for the Anbu he had sent out to fetch Sasuke Uchiha returned with a runt in tow. The Anbu forced Sasuke to kneel before the council and kept him pinned there. Seeing this caused a great deal of confusion amongst the members of the council. However, when the civilians and elders saw that he was missing his eyes, they cried out in outrage, furious about what they were seeing. What the hell is the meaning of this? One of the civilians shouted. Hiruzen narrowed his eyes at the civilians before glancing towards his old teammates. All of you will be silent now. He commanded. All will be made clear in due time. First things first. You need to know that this is not a simple meeting to discuss what has happened to Sasuke Uchiha. I have called you all here to determine his punishment for his actions on his recent mission to the Land of Waves. Hiruzen allowed this statement to settle in and waited for the inevitable blow-up. When they began to shout out their protests, he slammed every member of the council, even the clan heads, with his impressive killing intent. This silenced them, allowing him to continue. As I was saying before you interrupted me, Sasuke's actions in his recent mission warrant punishment of some kind. As you can see, he has had his eyes removed and destroyed. What you don't yet know is why. So, allow me to explain the situation to you. Over a month ago, Sasuke decided to demand a higher rank mission from me after only a short time of doing D ranks. He wanted something more worth his time, claiming that an Uchiha elite doesn't need to do chores. I was initially inclined to decline his request and tell him to fuck off, but then his sensei, Kakashi Haddock, decided to push the matter even further and claimed that his team was ready for a C-rank mission. As frustrating as it was for me, I decided to humor them, at least in the hopes that they'd learn their folly while on said mission. Anyways, shortly after leaving the village, Team 7 encountered the Demon Brothers of Kurigakure. While they were able to dispatch their foes, the mission at that point turned into at least a B rank, with a very likely possibility of turning into an A rank or worse. It was a mission they simply were not ready for. When I got Kakashi's report about what had happened, I sent Team 11, consisting of Jonin Anko Mitarashi and Genin's Naruto Uzumaki, Caulifla and Kale to back them up. However, because I couldn't trust Kakashi, I placed Anko in charge of the mission. I also gave them a secondary mission of hunting down Geto and ending him and his men. Unfortunately, Kakashi decided to continue with the mission instead of waiting for reinforcements to arrive. As a result, he and his team were nearly killed by Zabuza Mamachi. Hiruzen motioned to Zabuza at this point, bringing everyone's attention to him. Team 11 rescued them and took over the mission at that point. Unfortunately, Kakashi Haddock, Sasuke Uchiha and Sakura Haruno were interfering in Team 11's mission to hunt down and deal with Geto. That strike won against them. After killing Geto and his men and freeing the people of Waves, Teams 7 and 11 encountered Zabuza and Haku, his adopted daughter, on the bridge Tazuna was building. Unfortunately, the two of them had not learned of Geto's death and were prepared to continue with their attempts to kill the bridge builder. Anko had ordered everyone to hold their positions while she attempted to communicate with the two of them and end the conflict peacefully. As expected, however, Kakashi Haddock and Sasuke Uchiha disobeyed orders and started a fight between themselves and Zabuza and Haku. That is strike 2 against them. As the battle raged on, Sasuke was about to lose his fight against Haku when she had him pinned down in her ultimate technique. It was at this point that Sasuke used the replacement technique to replace himself with Kale-chan from Team 11. He used her to take the blows that were meant for him. Because of his actions, Kale-chan nearly died. This is strike 3 against him. As a result of his actions, something triggered inside of Naruto-kun and Caulifla-chan. Their rage overwhelmed them and they underwent some kind of transformation, attaining a new level of power. They turned their rage on Sasuke, but before they could kill him, Kakashi replaced himself with Sakura, leaving her at Zabuza's mercy. Also he could get to Sasuke in time to protect him. This is strike 3 against Kakashi. It shouldn't need to be said, but just so you all understand, Kakashi was knocked aside and prevented from helping his student. Caulifla-chan attempted to kill Sasuke with an attack, but Sakura, in an act of bravery, jumped in front of Caulifla-chan's attack and saved Sasuke at the cost of her life. It was at this point that they decided that death was too merciful for Sasuke and so they proceeded to remove his eyes and destroy them so they may never be used against a fellow Konoha shinobi. It was already obvious that he was willing to do whatever it took to save himself. It's also obvious that he has no loyalty to this village or respect for anyone in it, not even me. So it's not too far-fetched to imagine that he'd stand against a fellow Konoha shinobi if they got in his way. Anyways, rather than honor his teammate's sacrifice, Sasuke insulted Sakura and her act of bravery. Kakashi was no better. This is strike 4 against them. Hiruzen continued with a heavy sigh following afterwards. Kakashi has already been punished for his actions. Now, we simply need to decide on Sasuke's punishment. I'm quite displeased with him and my ire was only taken to a new level when he insulted me in my office, calling me a senile old bastard. His arrogance is at a ridiculous level and Kakashi obviously hadn't done anything to rein him in. Now, I have an idea about what to do to Sasuke in punishment for his actions and words, but I would like to hear opinions from those of you here. Now that you know what happened on their recent mission, what do you propose we do about Sasuke Uchiha? Hiruzen questioned. The civilians' initial reaction was to defend Sasuke, but they all stopped to think on what was just explained to them. Looking at Sasuke, they frowned and soon began to discuss the situation with one another. After a while, they turned to face the Hokage and let their representative speak up. Hokage-sama. We suggest that Sasuke have his assets seized and given to the village's coffers. The Uchiha compound should be made into a regular housing district where our shinobi force could live in better conditions than some of them currently live in. Finally, in order to prevent Sasuke from lashing out against anyone again, we think it would be wise to have his chakra sealed. Hiruzen nodded at this before turning to the clan heads. And what do you all think? He questioned. Shibi looked at Sasuke for a while before turning his gaze onto the Hokage. What the civilians have suggested holds merit. However, I would like to add on to Sasuke's punishment. He is a criminal and should be treated as such. Locking him in a cell for the rest of his days after having his chakra sealed seems to be appropriate. As you said, Naruto and Caulifla decided death would be far too merciful for someone like him. Hiruzen nodded in acceptance of this before turning to the elders. And what do the three of you think? Amura decided to speak for them. We have nothing to add. I'd say having his precious Sharingan eyes removed from him is punishment and humiliation enough, but I like what the others have suggested. I say lock him up and throw away the key. Let him see just what his actions have wrought. The third nodded again before turning back to face Sasuke. Your punishment has been decided, Sasuke Uchiha. Your assets will be taken and put forth to bettering the village. Your compound will be given to the people to serve as a housing project for the people, most especially the shinobi of Konoha, to reside. You will also have your chakra sealed before you are thrown in prison. However, I have one more punishment to add. You will have sperm drained from you to be used to impregnate willing women so we can restore the Uchiha clan from scratch and raise them to be respectful and respected members of society. They will be raised properly and trained to become far better than the Uchiha of old. You will have no contact with any of them and therefore won't be able to corrupt them and their ideals. Now Anbu, take him away. After an Anbu appeared and then disappeared with Sasuke, Hiruzen let out a frustrated sigh and shook his head in disappointment. It's a shame about what happened to Sakura. I'll have to inform her parents of what transpired on Team 7's mission. Inoichi, I know your daughter was close to Sakura. Try to let her know what happened as easily as you can. And do try to break her of her obsession with the Uchiha, would you? I'd rather she not try to free him or something else stupid like that. The blonde mindwalker nodded in understanding. Of course, Hokage-sama. But I don't know how much success I'll have at getting through to her. I've tried everything I could think of so far to break her of her obsession with that boy, but nothing's worked. Still, I'll do whatever I can to try and get through to her. Maybe, if I'm lucky, she'll even stop dieting and actually put some effort into being a better Kunoichi. Hiruzen shrugged his shoulders and said, we can only hope, Inoichi. Now, unless someone has any more matters to discuss, I'd like to call this meeting to an end. Danzo stepped forward at this point and narrowed his eye on the saiyans. You said that those two underwent some kind of transformation. Does this mean the boy has managed to tap into the power of that creature? And what of the girl? Is she a Jinchuriki as well? The third glared at Danzo and said, speaking about the Kyuubi is still forbidden, Danzo. I could have you executed for daring to mention it in front of those not in the know. The Warhawk scoffed at this and said, face it Hiruzen, you're too afraid of the consequences to even attempt to kill me. Now answer the question. Hiruzen snapped his fingers and a group of Anbu surrounded Danzo, their blades piercing his body in numerous locations. When he appeared near Himura and Kaharu with nary a wound on his body, the Hokage's eyes narrowed suspiciously. Quickly rising from his chair, he faced Danzo and flashed through hand seals before he became a veritable flamethrower, spewing fire from his mouth in a wave. Danzo scowled as he moved to leap out of the way, only to find himself pinned in place by Shikaku's shadow. When the flames consumed him, he was forced to use up another of his hidden Sharingan eyes to escape with his life. When he reappeared this time, everyone could see his disfigured arm now that the bandages had been burned away. They also saw the Sharingan in place of his right eye. What have you done to yourself, Danzo? How dare you do this? Hiruzen questioned angrily. TCH. So you've regrown your backbone. Not entirely unexpected, though I had hoped it wouldn't come to this. Danzo began, only to scream out in agony as his arm was struck by numerous blasts of energy. Glaring at the girl known as Caulifla, he prepared to attack her only to stop when he realized she had targeted the eyes embedded in his arm. Looking down at them, he saw that each of the Sharingan eyes had just been destroyed. Shit. He said before quickly summoning his root soldiers to him and disappearing with them, choosing to live to fight another day rather than lose his life here. Hiruzen scowled and ordered his Anbu to hunt Danzo down and put an end to him. Retaking his seat, he slammed a fist onto the table and exclaimed, damn him. I ordered Root disbanded years ago. What's the matter old-timer? Caulifla questioned. Is it really that shocking to see that he disobeyed you? He seems like a real scumbag to me. Especially if he's willing to reveal such delicate information about Naruto-kun to those that aren't already in the know. The Hokage sighed and massaged his temples to stem off a growing headache. Ugh. I suppose you're right, Caulifla-chan. I really shouldn't be surprised that he'd stoop so low. Regardless, what's done is done. I just hope the Anbu are able to locate him and end his rotten life. Anyways, what would you three say to me giving you a portion of Sasuke's assets? You're the party here wronged, after all. Naruto shrugged and said, that's fine with me Gramps. I still can't help but wish I had killed him. I'm still angry about what he did to Kale-chan. Hiruzen sighed, but nodded his head in understanding. I understand, Naruto-kun. For what it's worth, I'm sorry you and your friends were put through such a horrible experience. Not your fault old-timer. Caulifla said. From what we know about Sasuke, it was kinda to be expected. I'm pissed about it, don't get me wrong, but he's just that type of person. True enough. Hiruzen said with a sigh. Anyways, I'm calling this meeting to a close. Everyone's free to go. Naruto-kun, take your friends and go home and rest. You've earned it. Thank you Gramps. Naruto said before he and his friends left the council chambers. Once outside, Anko dismissed herself and left the group to do as they pleased. As they walked, Kale couldn't help but reach out and grab one of Naruto's hands and one of Caulifla's hands. Smiling shyly at them both, she couldn't help but feel happy just being with them. Naruto smiled at Kale and said, you seem happy. What's up? Kale giggled and shook her head. I'm just glad to be here with you both. I feel better when I'm with you. Caulifla grinned and gave Kale's hand a gentle squeeze. We're always gonna be here for you Kale. You'd better believe it. I know. Thanks sis. 1 week later. Kale frowned as she looked at the cat in her arms. Softly stroking its fur and scratching it behind the ears occasionally, she couldn't help but wonder what caused poor Tora to run away this time. What happened to you, you little cutie? She questioned sadly. Tora simply snuggled into Kale's arms and purred contently. When her teammates appeared in the clearing with her, she looked them in the eyes and said, I think something happened. Tora wouldn't have run away again otherwise. Anko frowned and nodded her head in agreement. Agreed. Something strange is going on. We need to speak with Madam Shijimi and try to get to the bottom of this. The members of Team 11 each agreed with her as they began making their way to the Hokage Tower. Upon arriving, they entered the Hokage's office and saw Madam Shijimi there waiting for them alongside Hiruzen Sarutobi. Kale walked up to Shijimi and handed Tora over to her, watching as the overweight woman did as Kale had instructed her to before. Thank you for returning her to me. Again. Kale shook her head and offered Madam Shijimi a smile. It's fine. But I have to ask, do you know what caused her to run away this time? The kind woman shook her head negatively. I have no idea. Everything was going just fine. Then one day, she got so upset and ran away again. I don't understand. Anko frowned and looked towards the Hokage. Hokage-sama, I'm requesting permission to take a mission to go to the capital with Madam Shijimi. I'd like to get to the bottom of this and figure out what's going on that would cause Tora to run away again. I think that someone might have done something and, as much trouble as Tora has caused in the past, I don't want to see her hurt. Something's definitely wrong here. Hiruzen frowned at this and asked, are you sure about this, Anko? Yakumo is still new to your team and I'd prefer it if you stayed to work on your teamwork for a while before attempting a mission like this. Do you think your team is ready for such a thing? The beautiful snake mistress nodded and said, I'm damn sure of it, Hokage-sama. We can handle something like this, no sweat. Please, let us help Madam Shijimi and Tora. The third didn't get the chance to reply right away as Shijimi turned to him and said, Dear Hiruzen, if it helps you to make up your mind, allow me to officially request the aid of Team 11 to find out what caused my dear Tora to run away this time. If someone's hurting her or something far more sinister is going on, I want it stopped. I trust Team 11 and I'm willing to pay a great deal for their assistance in this matter. Hiruzen offered her a smile before looking at the members of Team 11. Team 11, your request for this mission is granted. Make sure you get to the bottom of this mystery and set things right again. If things turn sour for whatever reason, send for backup. I'm not sure what to expect from a mission like this, so make sure to be prepared for anything. You're dismissed. Alright team, you heard him. Go and get packed for a month. I don't know how long this will take, so I want you all to be prepared for anything and everything. Get going. Anko ordered before she left to go and pack her things. A few days later, capital of the Land of Fire. Team 11, meet my husband, the daimyo of the Land of Fire. I just call him Sweetie, but you can refer to him as Daimyo-sama or by his name, Hachibei-sama. Sweetie, they're here to help figure out what's going on with Tora. She ran away again and I'm not sure why. Shijimi said, introducing them to her husband. The Fire Daimyo looked over the members of Team 11 and offered them a warm smile. Welcome to the Kasai, the Land of Fire's capital city. I am known as Hachibei Pira, otherwise known as the daimyo of the Land of Fire. It's a pleasure to meet those who helped my dear wife and her cat before. The members of Team 11 were currently knelt before him, their heads bowed. This naturally irritated the hell out of Caulifla, but she dealt with it because she knew that there were times to be respectful, and this was definitely one of them. Anko looked up into the daimyo's eyes and said, it's a pleasure to make your acquaintance, Daimyo-sama. I just hope we can figure out what's happening so we can help Tora. I don't like the thought that someone might be purposely hurting her, but there's a definite possibility that someone is. We're here to find out what's happening so we can fix it. Of course, of course. If you require any kind of aid from me, I'm more than happy to give you whatever you need. Of course, you're all more than welcome to use a few of my palace's guest rooms during your stay here. I'm sure they'll be far more comfortable than sleeping outside like you're no doubt used to, what with all those important missions you shinobi take all the time. Each member of Team 11 grinned at this and nodded their heads in thanks. Thank you, Daimyo-sama. We truly appreciate your generosity. Anko said professionally. Very good. The daimyo said before he clapped his hands a couple of times, summoning forth a servant. Lead these good people to a couple of guest rooms, would you dear girl? They need to get settled in before they begin their mission. Be sure to treat them as you would any important guest to Kasai. The woman bowed to her leader before she motioned for Team 11 to follow her. When they arrived at the guest rooms a short while later, Anko motioned for her genin to follow her into one of the rooms. Sitting down on one of the beds, she looked seriously at the four genin. Alright, we're not here to screw around. Something very strange is going on, and I've got a feeling we're not gonna like what we're about to find. I want all of you to be prepared for combat at any time. Our primary goal is to find out what's going on with Tora. In order to do this, I want to keep an eye on the daimyo as well as Madam Shijimi. The majority of us will focus on watching Tora in her everyday life. 2 of you will be watching the daimyo and Madam Shijimi in secret while the rest of us tail Tora. Make sure to keep your headsets equipped and on just in case we need to stay in touch with one another. Do you understand? Pale frowned and asked, do you really think the daimyo-sama or his wife might be doing something to Tora? Anko frowned as well and shook her head. I'm certain Madame Shijimi isn't doing anything to harm Tora. However, I'd like to know what she does throughout the day and what her interactions are like with Tora, just so we can rule her out. As for Daimyo-sama, we're shinobi, we're naturally suspicious of pretty much everybody. Whether it's done consciously or not, Daimyo-sama may be doing something to hurt Tora. I highly doubt it though. Still, I want to know what he does throughout the day so we can rule him out too. Oh, and be careful when you try to watch him, as the 12 Guardian Ninja will be protecting him at all times. If they deem you a threat to the daimyo's life, they will take action. If they approach you, do not fight them. Just inform them about what you're doing and hope they understand. Do you understand me? Each of the genin nodded before Yakumo asked the all-important question, so who's watching the daimyo and his wife? Anko looked at Naruto and said, you're going to be watching the daimyo. You're the stealthiest member of the team and should be able to go without detection. Just be extra careful, Naruto-kun. Naruto nodded in understanding before banging a fist against his chest. Of course. Just leave it to me, Anko-sensei. Good. Kale-chan, Anko began as she turned her gaze to Kale. Because of your rapport with Madame Shijimi, you will be watching her throughout the day. Try to stay out of sight, okay? Yes, Anko-sensei. I won't let you down. Good. The rest of us will be watching Tora from different vantage points. We're going to be keeping an eye out for anything suspicious. We need to see just what Tora does in a regular day. If she's getting into something she's not supposed to, or if someone's hurting her, or if things just seem off, we will take note of everything. I want to ensure Tora's safety, so if anything seems wrong, we'll intervene and keep that cat safe. Of course, Anko-sensei. The genin exclaimed. We won't let you down. Nodding her head in acceptance of this, Anko said, alright kiddos, let's go. As of this moment, the mission has begun. Let's keep that cat safe. What if Naruto has all Saiyans potential in Dragon Ball, and thanks for watching my video till the end. If you enjoy this content, then do consider subscribing to my channel and leave a like if you guys need the next part, comment down, and thanks for watching the video and see you guys in the next video.